My entitled coworker makes my job a living nightmare as she constantly is trying to get me fired and make me look bad. But after dealing with her garbage for years, I finally got revenge by literally getting her fired after she got exposed to management and basically the entire company for being incredibly incompetent. Here's what happened. Okay, so I've been an assistant bakery and deli manager for like 6 years now. In those years, we had someone who I will call Jill take over the previous manager's position, and she did this basically by backstabbing everybody and lying. And even though this was a position that was supposed to go to me, she had a friend in upper management that got her transferred over, and basically she took it right from underneath me. Jill never did any of the work. She left things for me to do at the last minute, took 4-day weekends, intentionally missed orders to try and make me look bad, literally the whole 9 yards. Now, I put up with it for years, and every time I brought it up with management, they gave an excuse or sort of just brushed me off. The company has a union, so getting someone with even a year of seniority over you in trouble is almost impossible. I was doing more and more of the work, making sure orders went off on time, fixing the ones that she would forget or mess up, covering shifts, calling people to come in if she intentionally underscheduled us, as well as training and all this other stuff. And honestly, it was a headache. During this time, I got married, which as a side note, she tried to deny me my vacation time to do so, and I had a hectic schedule that my husband graciously understood. I dealt with it for another few years and just got so tired with everything. But then the real kicker came along. I got pregnant with our first child, and I decided right then and there that once I left for maternity, I wasn't going back. I did everything by the books. I notified management and the union, I scheduled doctor's visits and worked around my schedule. I made sure that there was no possible way she could mess with me. And once I heard the due date, I grinned a maniacal smile deep in my soul because my baby was due in the month of April, right before the busiest time of any deli or bakery. That's right, I'm talking about graduation. When you're in a town with over 3 colleges and 4 high schools just in a 10-mile radius, you get a lot of orders to fill. I even had a reputation for color matching certain school colors and doing cakes at the last minute. On any given day for those months, they could have anywhere from 15 to over 150 cakes going out in a weekend. And we're talking just from Friday to Sunday, and to make matters worse for them, I was the only cake decorator. I let them know that they had to get someone in and hired for me to train multiple times, or else they would be in dire straits, especially since Jill didn't like decorating. But you know what? They never listened, just like always. So after 4 months, I just stopped reminding them. I let it go, and it honestly felt great. Then I decided to use one of my vacations during the week before delivery, which is a good thing I did because the baby was ready anyways. And even still, they had not found a cake decorator at all. The day I delivered my baby, guess who finally got demoted? Jill had scheduled one of her classic 4-day weekends again, missed 3 supply orders, didn't cover my shift, and the icing on the cake is that she left 19 cake orders unfulfilled for a Friday and didn't let management know about them at all. When Friday morning came around and she wasn't there was a line of angry customers wondering where their cakes were. Upper store management was called in. People from 2 different departments who had some experience on cakes were pulling pre-made quarter sheets and randomly throwing sprinkles this way and that and giving out the cakes just for free. Like seriously, over $1,000 in products having to be given to customers for free. Apparently, this also happened on a day the district manager was set to come in and do a tour to make sure that things were set up for graduation. Needless to say, she got demoted and moved from the department the very day that she came back into the store. Because of course, she turned off her phone over the weekend so that no one would disturb her. Now, I only know this because they called to see if I could come back for a day or 2 for my vacation to fix everything, because they had not known that I had the baby yet and just thought I was still heavily pregnant. Well, for the past 6 months, I've now been a stay-at-home mom, and I simply cannot be happier without all the stress from there. They still ask if I want my old job back when I grocery shop there, but I just smile and I tell them no thank you. Although I do miss some of my coworkers, because now I get to raise an amazing little boy and bake cakes for fun instead of for a job. Oh, dude, this is such a great story. I love the fact that you got revenge here and you basically got her fired from that job. Like seriously, for starters, this lady tried to deny you getting any vacation time just to get married. And that would really piss me off if I was in your shoes, like holy crap. And it's pretty obvious that Jill knew you were supposed to be the person to take that job, which is the only reason why she made your life a living nightmare for years. But I'm kind of convinced that people like this eventually get exposed in a way that they cannot recover from, especially when they're getting away with 4-day weekends. Like, bro, what is going on? She only did that because she knew for a fact you were going to cover it, and that is so unacceptable in my opinion. So good for you for getting your revenge, because this lady absolutely deserves it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled Karen kept shoving past me in a crowded concert line trying to get to the front. So I got some petty revenge by literally spilling some tea on her, which was more than enough to remind her that no, she shouldn't be doing this, and yes, she absolutely needs to go back to the end of the line. Here's how I did it. Okay, so last weekend, my friends and I were stoked to attend a concert that we've been hyping up for weeks. The line to get to the venue was absolute chaos. Think sardines in a can, with everyone freezing in the chilly evening air. To stay warm, we grabbed some hot tea from a vendor nearby, and we're just sipping it while chatting and waiting our turn like civilized human beings. Well, enter this group of girls who decide lines are absolutely optional. They weave through the crowds, elbowing their way toward the front, and one girl in particular zeroed in on our spot, shoving past my friends and I without even so much as saying excuse me. I'm usually really chill, but after 45 minutes of waiting in the cold, I was completely over it. I gave her a gentle nudge back to hold my ground, but she just scoffed and kept pushing, practically stepping on my toes in the packed crowd. And at this point, I was fed up, but I also saw my moment. As she squeezed past me, still shoving like she owned the place, I pretended to lose my balance and tilted my cup of tea just enough for a small splash to land on her jacket. Now, this was nothing scalding, but just enough to make her yelp and shoot me a death glare. I played it off with a quick, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's super crowded," and she muttered something under her breath and scurried back to her group, suddenly less eager to cut ahead. The best part is my friends saw the whole thing and were stifling laughs as we finally got into the concert, feeling just a tiny bit warmer for my petty victory. And in the long run, no harm was actually done, just a little tea-stained justice that this lady absolutely deserved. Oh man, imagine going to a concert and then trying to cut to the head of the line. Like, you have got to be either brave or incredibly stupid, and from the sounds of it, this lady was absolutely stupid. Because dude, waiting in line at a concert is like sacred territory. Some people wait in these lines for days, bro. You're not about to just cut in front of them and think it's okay. So in my opinion, I think you did a good thing by reminding her that yeah, a lot worse can happen to her than some spilled tea, because truly, someone could have had a much more violent reaction to her cutting in front of everybody. So I think the way you handle this in the long run is a lot better of an option than getting punched in the face, which is something this lady easily could have encountered if she kept going. An entitled Karen at my gym tries to use her lipstick to write an X on equipment that she's going to use, which absolutely backfired in spectacular fashion as this lady ended up getting banned from my gym. Here's how it went down. Okay, so this happened yesterday afternoon at the gym. A woman was making her way to different pieces of equipment in the gym, only she didn't sit down to use any of it. Instead, she used her lipstick to make X's on the equipment. So I walk over and I ask her what she's doing after she puts an X on the final piece of equipment, and it's here that she actually tells me that she's labeling which equipment she will be using when she comes out of the locker room, and then she disappears to go change, I guess. Well, when she returns, she finds everything she had labeled occupied, and she actually walks over to me as I'm training someone and says, "Okay, what's going on here? I reserved these spots." I then told her there's no reserving equipment, and people had to clean up her marks before using the equipment. I then told her if I caught her using any kind of makeup again, in the way where she was like trying to claim it by putting a mark on it, you know, while she's in the locker room changing, I will get my boss to talk to her about how it's unsanitary to use any kind of makeup on our equipment just to try and reserve some arbitrary spot. In the end, she had to wait for every piece of equipment, and then she got to get her workouts in. Now, I would hope that this is the end of it, but trust me, it gets way worse. I saw the woman today, and I got my boss to let her know that the lipstick bandit, which is absolutely what I nicknamed this woman, by the way, was currently present in the gym. My boss then approached her, and the two went towards my boss's office. Well, no more than 7 minutes passed by before the woman was heard screaming. She was saying, "This isn't fair. You can't ban me just because I marked what equipment I'm going to be using." And it was here that the woman stormed off towards the locker rooms and then stormed by me with her gym bag in hand, looking like she was about to scream. But thankfully she left after that, and I haven't seen her ever since. Okay, I'm gonna say this right now, that is incredibly gross. Seriously, don't put lipstick on equipment at a gym. If you want to do that with your own crap, go ahead, but don't do that for like public equipment that everybody uses. That is really nasty, and I think her getting banned was absolutely the best decision. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that she is also to blame for why my brother and I won't host our parents for the holidays? Because truly, my parents hate each other and they are constantly arguing. And at this point, I'm not sure if I made a mistake by telling her the truth. Here's what's going on. So last Christmas was my brother's first holiday not living at home with our parents. He wanted to host everyone in his new apartment, and also around this time last year, my parents had mutually agreed not to get each other gifts as they were focusing on paying off some debt. But apparently there was some miscommunication. My dad thought this meant no no gifts at all, and my mom thought this meant no gifts, but they'd still exchange stockings. In our family, stockings are always small stuff. Body care, candy, stuff like that. You get the picture. I was living with my parents last year, and I had heard all the discussions. I honestly saw both sides of it, but when Christmas morning came around, we all woke up and mom didn't have her stocking filled from dad. And I noticed that she was very quiet, but very clearly hurt. He then ran out to the pharmacy quickly, bought some things to fill her stocking, and said the entire time that he was sorry. Now, should my dad have communicated better? Sure, absolutely. And do I understand my mom's feelings were hurt by the situation? Also, sure, I totally get it. But I thought they'd get past it, especially for lunch at my brother's place. We eventually go, and my dad is doing his best to make up for his blunder. In the meantime, my mom is in a terrible mood and keeps picking at him all day long. Toward the end of our time there, she ended up making a snarky remark about my dad not filling her stocking. And it's here that my dad flipped out and started screaming that nothing he ever does is enough, and then he stormed out. My brother was also clearly upset by having Christmas ruined by their arguing, and I eventually convinced my mom that we should leave not long after that. My brother and I were upset with both of them. My dad should not have flipped out and screamed, and my mom also should have kept her comments to herself or just spoken to my dad later on. My brother was also embarrassed as his roommate had come home, and while he was in his living room, he overheard the arguing. My brother stopped having my parents over altogether after that, even though he would still invite me, and my brother would also visit us from my parents' place. Well, Thanksgiving is fast approaching, and we were all trying to coordinate plans. I recently got my own place, but honestly, I don't want to host after last year. My brother said he's never hosting another holiday at his apartment ever again. My mom was hurt by this, but eventually we all just planned to have dinner at my parents' place again. Later on, my mom was complaining to me that my brother won't have us over anymore, and that she's feeling pushed out. She then said it was my dad's fault, and she shouldn't be punished for what happened. But I told her that while dad was wrong for screaming, she chose to be whiny all day long. I clarified that I understood she was hurt, but she also partially ruined the day by not letting it go. My mom got mad at me and accused me of taking sides, and I said that I'm not. If dad complained, I would have told him the same thing, but he at least seems to understand that he ruined it. I also pointed out that neither of them ever apologized to my brother, and I'm not confident that they'd never do it again. My mom says I'm in the wrong for how I spoke to her, but honestly, I'm just not sure. Now, for additional context, this is not my parents' first time having an argument like this, because in fact, in the past, it hasn't always been about Christmas, but it's been about other stuff too. They really do hate each other if I'm being honest, but they stay married due to the fact that they can't afford to get a divorce and live separately. And when I say they hate each other, I mean that their screaming matches are constant, and they have ruined other family events too. We've suggested therapy, but they won't go. They just want to stay trapped and miserable. And yet when my brother and I bickered about stupid stuff as kids, they would scream at us for ruining their peace. But we're now at the point where they don't get to do this stuff without some kind of consequence. And you know what? This is the consequence. So with all that in mind, am I the jerk for telling my mom that she's also to blame? Because right now I'm not sure if I stepped over a line. No, you're not the jerk. Your mom and dad absolutely know what they're doing. They complain all the time, and all this crap carries over into the family, and that's not fair for you or anybody else. And yeah, I completely agree. You absolutely should be putting down your foot and being like, hey, this is the boundary. You can either follow it and everybody gets along, or you can be weird and then there's gonna be consequences. Because this is one of those situations where consequences are absolutely deserved. Am I the jerk for not letting my mom use my apartment as storage? As she literally is trying to get me to take 5 boxes of Christmas decorations, even though at the time it was the middle of July. Because right now I'm very frustrated and I just don't know if I'm making a mistake. Here's how it all went down. I'm a 30-year-old female and I finally moved out of my family home. I saved enough money to get myself a down payment on a second-floor apartment, and I wanted to move out because my mom always puts house decor all over the place, even when there's no room for it. And she even accepts furniture from relatives that we just can't fit in the house. When I said that I was moving out, she gave me most of the furniture that she had gotten, and I happily accepted it because I don't have a lot of money left to spend. So I got 2 bedside drawers, a couch, a bookshelf, and all I took from the house is my bed, with the frame included because I bought it, and the second TV, which I also bought. And I'm seriously loving living by myself. A few months passed by and my mom asked me to hold on to a few things, and it was 5 boxes of Christmas decorations. And I said to her, Mom, it's July. What is this? She then said to me, I know, but I need space for some things that I bought for the house. Well, I was only okay with it after I told her it's until she can make room for it. Fast forward and it's been weeks, so now whenever she visits, it's always to drop something off because there's literally no room in her house. This time, after a landlord inspection, I told her that she can't drop anything off at my apartment anymore because it's getting too much, and my landlord had to cite me for the mess I was making. So when I told her that she had to either make room or get rid of it, she told me I was okay with her doing this, but I was never okay with it. I told her to take it or or else I'm just gonna throw it away. It's not mine. Like, she always asked me to put stuff in my room closet when I live with her, so now I'm just gonna put my foot down on this. I have a minimalist apartment, which I do as best as I can, plus it's not that big. So for storage, there's only a small hat closet, as well as a bedroom closet, but I need that to fit my clothes and my shoes. And she seriously expects me to hold her stuff? Like, no, not this time, I'm not doing it. It's not my stuff, it's hers. So I told her she can either take it out of my apartment or else I'm just gonna throw it away. So with all that in mind, am I the jerk for asking my mom to do this? Because right now I don't know what to do. Bro, there's no way you're the jerk here. You mean to tell me that you got written up by your landlord all because your mom was storing crap at your place? Like, okay, that is like the last and only straw I would ever deal with, because that is some crazy talk. What do you mean you got written up? At that point, I would start putting it down by the curb and be like, okay, you better go get this because I'm not gonna keep it. And also, what's your mom doing buying Christmas decorations in July? That sounds really obnoxious in my opinion, and I would hate everything about that. So no, you're definitely not the jerk because your mom is being very irrational. My mom is in the throes of a midlife crisis that is literally destroying the entire family, as I'm literally a bystander to her antics, and at this point, I just don't know how to intervene. Here's what's going on. I'm a 23-year-old male, I'm a middle child living in the United States, and I have an insanely large family. There is literally 10 of us. To be clear, this is a family made from adoption and marriage, so while I have 5 brothers and 4 sisters, 3 of them are step-siblings, one's a half-sibling, and 3 cousins were adopted. My mom is 47 years old, and my stepfather is 56 and have been married for almost 20 years. We never had a lot of money growing up, but managed to scrape by and we're all doing mostly alright. Not to say that my parents didn't do their best to raise us well. None of us have ever been arrested or have gotten into any kind of trouble with the law, and we have mostly since broken up into groups that live on our own. I currently live with my stepbrother and cousin in this apartment in my town, and I've been here ever since I was 19 years old. Now at this point, I've been mainly an observer in this recently developed behavior from my mom, and it is quite concerning to say the least. When I say we never had a lot of money, I absolutely mean it. My parents worked really hard to raise us, but they were not fiscally responsible, to the point where we were constantly called by collection agencies and getting our stuff repossessed. This hasn't changed too much since we've become adults, but with a lack of kids to raise, you would assume that my parents could finally find a footing and save their money. But no, it never happened. For the last few years, my mother and sister have become more like high school best friends that literally travel together constantly, going on concert tours and spending weeks away from home, and leaving my 2 cousins all by themselves. Well, while this isn't a big deal in its own right, 2 of them are disabled and need supervision, as one frequently experiences severe seizures and the other is developmentally disabled. My stepdad is there every day, but he works as an electrician and doesn't get home until later in the evening. What really bothers me is my cousin being left alone. I really care about them, and they are essentially my own siblings at this point, and I'm annoyed that my mother won't get the one with seizures on medication and claims that there isn't a neurologist that can prescribe him medication in our town, which by the way, that is completely false. My family also has a large amount of animals that are left alone, including birds, cats, dogs, and reptiles which do not get the care that they need most of the day. I visit when I can, but I'm currently working full-time and attending college, so my hands are really tied. This is the same with most of my siblings that have moved out, and some have even been alienated, to the point where they will likely never step foot in that house ever again. All of my siblings, except for my sister and the youngest brother, have expressed concerns for these developments. My disabled cousin that lives with me is also highly agitated because my mom owes him $1,000. My grandparents are also owed money and can't do much to help since they're in poor health. Another thing that bothers me is that my youngest sibling, who is the only one still attending high school, is going with them on these vacations and is missing sometimes 10 weeks of school a year. In fact, it got so bad that a truancy officer had to get involved. There's also some other concerning behavior that I've noticed too, such as a blatant disregard for responsibility on the home front. Last year, for example, my mother went to Disney World with a few colleagues and forgot to pay the electrical bill, which caused the family home to be without power for like 2 weeks. I literally had to bring siblings in just to shower or to sleep at my place. And for reference, we live in the South and it gets really hot here during the summer. Also, my mother is financing her dream car, even though it isn't really affordable at like $600 a month. At the end of the day, I know this is some kind of midlife crisis, but the excessive vacations in lieu of saving for retirement, as well as her getting a sports car and other behavior, is something that just honestly is really concerning. However, all of my concerns are always brushed aside, and I just don't know what to do anymore. My stepdad seems to be alright with it, but at this point, he's going to be working and renting the family home until he passes away. What should I do? Okay, honestly, I know people like this, and I know family members who act like this, and honestly, I don't know if I have a good answer for you in like what you should and shouldn't do. I know when I'm in this situation and I see them just completely wasting their life away and making terrible decisions, I just take a step back and I say to myself, I'm not getting involved and I'm not giving them any money. Like, I refuse to enable this behavior, and maybe that might be the attitude that you need to take as well, because what you're describing is really alarming, especially for the pets. Like, think about it, she's leaving them without any kind of care or help, maybe even forgetting to like feed them. Like, dude, that is sick. That is messed up. Like, that alone would probably make me call some kind of organization to report her, because that's not okay. You can't do that and think you can get away with it. It's also really sad that even after all these years, she's still incredibly irresponsible with her money. Like, just look at the vacation she's going on, leaving for weeks at a time and just saying, okay, I'll be back whenever I get back. Like, holy crap, get a grip, lady. You have responsibilities. There are people and animals relying on you, and you can't just walk away like that. So truly, I'm sorry that you're dealing with this. I'm so sorry that your mom's kind of going through it, but it's honestly no good excuse in my opinion. She absolutely needs to get her life together, whether that's of her like figuring it out herself or you reporting her and getting it going that way, which at this point I don't think would be a bad idea considering all the details that you shared. Like, this is really concerning, and I think something absolutely should be done. My entitled brother fakes a mental illness just to milk my parents of their retirement savings. And after years of putting up with this garbage, the truth finally comes out, and I've never been more angry and disappointed in anyone in my life. Here's what happened. So I grew up in a middle-class family in a low-income area. My parents had a tendency to spoil my older brother far more than me, mostly because I was the quiet one who never spoke up. This resulted in my brother getting his way more often than me. It was nothing blatant, but it was enough to give him an entitlement complex a mile wide. When my brother was a teenager, he struggled with some serious mental illnesses. These were absolutely legitimate, and they did cripple his ability to function for several years. My parents were obviously very concerned for him, and so they willingly paid top dollar for the best psychiatrist and psychologist that they could find to help him. By the time I was ready to go to a different city to start university, my brother was at a stage where he was ready to go as well. It was then decided that he would go to a university in the same city as me, and we would live together. My parents offered to pay for our rent all the way through university, so us flatting together obviously made a lot of financial sense for them. We would have to pay for everything else out of our student loans. Everything was set. We had found a good student flat, settled in, and everything was just there. He had a new care team in this new city. Unfortunately, my brother had an episode on his first day that resulted in him not going to class. This meant that he was removed from his program with the option of starting again in the second semester. Now, the obvious, logical, and sensible thing to do in that situation is for my brother to go home while I found a roommate to take the spare bedroom, and he could move back up and try again next semester. But my brother didn't like that idea. You see, he always hated living at home. He would always whine about how old our house was or how poor our neighborhood looked. Our neighborhood was lovely, by the way. There was a great sense of community, and I always loved it there. But he felt that he deserved better. The next thing we knew, his new psychologist was written a letter to my parents stating that it would be a good idea to allow him to stay living in the new city, to allow him to acclimate to his surroundings. My parents followed this advice and allowed him to stay. They replaced his weekly loan amount with an allowance of the same value and thought everything would move forward from there. This worked for a few weeks, but my brother started to hound my parents for more money. You see, he wasn't a student, so in his mind, why should he have to live like a student? No instant noodles and TV dinners for him. He wanted steak and lamb for dinner. He wanted to go to nice restaurants with his friends and go shopping whenever he felt like it. He wanted a new iPhone and a new MacBook because his was slow. And it's at this point I saw just how entitled my brother could be, as he started to do something that I honestly never thought he would do. My parents eventually gave in and doubled his allowance. Second semester rolls around and my brother hasn't even bothered enrolling. My parents weren't happy, but his psychologist writes him another letter, and so it continues. Fast forward 3 years and I am graduating with a job offer from my university in my field. The apartment is nice and convenient to my new job, so I continue to live there, only now I pay for my half of the rent and utilities. My brother is still not working or studying, and his allowance is now almost equal to my salary. Every time my parents try to force him home, his psychologist writes another letter, and my parents' trust in my brother's care team was high. They did save his life after all. By this point, my parents are just paying for his half of the utilities directly on top of his allowance. I suggested to my parents to get a second medical opinion, as he had been seeing this psychologist almost weekly for 3 years with no improvement, but my brother flat out refuses. He likes her. She apparently speaks to his soul, or whatever that means. About a year and a half after I graduate, our landlord decides to sell the apartment and the new owners want to live there. This is a normal thing that happens, and I'm not really bothered by this. I wanted to take the opportunity to live at my own place. I have a serious girlfriend whom I want to eventually marry, so I would like my own place that she could one day move into. And I also just generally wanted to move on with my adult life. But my parents didn't want my brother living on his own just yet. And again, he is refusing to come home. They beg me to stay for just one more year while they figure out an arrangement for him. We did get a rather short notice to move, so I can understand this, and one more year won't really matter too much to me, to be completely honest. So apartment hunting we go, and my brother goes fully off the entitlement deep end. He will only view apartments well outside our price range. Anything within budget is either too old or too small, or just too dark and ugly. He wants a new modern apartment in an expensive suburb right smack dab in the heart of the city. His psychologist writes another letter outlining the importance of a comfortable environment for him. My parents cave once again and agree to pay his rent for his dream apartment for us, but I can't afford half of the new rent. They compromise with me and I only have to pay the same rent as I paid before, which was barely 1/3 of the new rent at this new place. It was a beautiful apartment, so I was okay with the deal even though I wasn't happy. Unfortunately, my brother is now used to getting everything that he wants or needs. He starts asking me to pay for more and more of his groceries. Idiot me thinking that my mom and dad had cut down on his allowance now that the rent is so expensive, agreed to take up some of the slack, and that was a big mistake. They were still giving him the same amount. He just wanted more. He starts asking for more and more things, and then whines to his mom when I don't give it to him. My parents cave over and over again and get him whatever he wants. A new computer, a new MacBook, a new phone. I mean, he even got a new car. Up until this point, my parents could afford all of this and still save something for their retirement. My mom was completely honest with me about their finances, as when the time came, the power of attorney would transfer to me, so she wanted me to know where they stood. They were on track for a long, comfortable retirement, but then my dad unfortunately lost his job through very unusual circumstances. His company just straight up disappeared, and his boss left the country. This messed my dad up for quite a while, and he decided it was time to kick back and enjoy an early retirement. He was only 2 years short of retirement age anyways. My brother was furious. He would rage about how dad had betrayed him for not continuing to work to fund his lifestyle. He would regularly yell at my mom over the phone, saying that he expects them to continue to support him because he deserves the security of the lifestyle that he has earned. I laughed my butt off at that line, which turned into another long fight, but was totally worth it. I knew that without dad's income, my parents couldn't afford the rent where we lived, so I decided to force the issue and I moved out on my own. I had hoped that this would result in my brother's moving as well, but alas, his psychologist wrote another letter and he continued to live there. I moved on with my life. I got married, I went back to university, I bought a house, I did grown-up stuff. 5 years go by and I have virtually no contact with my brother. I'm visiting my parents one day, and when I take them out for lunch, my mom breaks down crying because she can't pay. It turns out my brother had been blackmailing my parents to continue to support him, saying that if they didn't, he would end up homeless and it would be all their fault. He still had the support of his medical team, and my parents didn't know what to do. He had burned through nearly 20 years worth of retirement savings since I moved out. My parents were both forced to go back to work to try and stretch out their retirement savings. I decided to visit this psychologist myself, only to find out that she's one of those people that will tell people exactly what they want to hear so that they keep getting money. And it's very predatory, and it was enabling my brother because he was now a cash cow for her. Our family was furious. Turns out my brother had been recovered since his first year living away from home. He was perfectly able to work or study. He just didn't want to. And so she wrote him those bogus letters just to let him get away with it. He decided to milk my parents of their savings to fund his lifestyle because apparently he had earned it, and they owed him for not giving him what he wanted when he was younger. When confronted about it, he was entirely unapologetic. As far as he was concerned, he was entitled to everything he got and then some. It's been a few years since then, and my parents have completely cut him off. They are surviving, but within a few years, I will probably end up having to support them. I have no issue with this. I'm their son and I'm fortunate enough to be able to do so, but it breaks my dad's heart knowing this. He grew up dirt poor and worked his butt off to provide for us, only to see it all disappear because of my selfish brother. The psychologist had their license suspended after my parents laid a complaint. I don't know if it was temporary or not, but I hope it was permanent. As for my brother, he works a dead-end retail job with a live-in boyfriend who pays for almost everything. He is still an entitled jerk, and I only see him during Christmas. I just want to emphasize that my brother had legitimate mental health issues. I do not want to take away from that at all. He just chose to willfully deceive everyone about the severity in order to demand that everyone else give him the life that he deserves. And before you ask, no, his mental illness did not contribute towards this attitude. It's not that sort of illness. My brother is just an entitled jerk. Wow, that is honestly awful. I can't imagine the turmoil your parents are going through. Like seriously, their entire life savings has just been taken away by their spoiled son who just took it from them, and willingly at that. I mean, it's so bad first off that the psychiatrist was acting that way and just writing notes and letters just to get more money out of this family, but it's also so horrible that the original poster's brother would be willing to do this to their parents. I mean, you have to have some serious lack of morals to let that happen in your life. But you know what? At least everybody now knows the truth, and this brother is basically ostracized from the family. And hopefully, for the sake of the original poster's family, their mom and dad are able to have some semblance of a retirement, even though the original poster's brother basically took that away from them. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. 2 cashiers are hassled by 2 different Karens in the same day, all while I'm trying to go to the supermarket and get my groceries. And I'm still incredibly shocked by this level of entitlement. Here's what happened. So in the country that I live in, it's common for people to do one big shopping trip per month right after they get paid. I'm not sure how it works in other countries, but just to let you know, during the first week of the month, it's impossible to go to the supermarket without knowing that you'll have to wait at least an hour in line, and that's on a good day. So people are naturally irritable and very nervous already. So here it goes. I was shopping for my house, and my dad was shopping for his. My siblings were all with my dad. We finished our shopping, and when it was time to pay, we split up into 2 different checkout lines. I went to a regular line, and my dad went to a priority service line. Now, my sister has Asperger's and cerebral palsy, which you would hardly notice due to years of physiotherapy. My other brother also has a different degree of autism, which is the more common type where you see kids not eating, refusing to speak, having an angry outburst, and so on. It's not as severe as him not being able to speak, but if something bothers him, he has rage outbursts that honestly, if I were in my parents' place, I wouldn't have the patience to deal with. So there we were, me in the right checkout line and my dad is in the left one. My line was much longer, with about 5 full shopping carts ahead of me, but my dad's line only had 2, and he was the last one in his line. I don't know who was the first person since I didn't pay attention, but then a few minutes later, I saw a woman with fire in her eyes approaching my dad's shopping cart. She was with her husband and a baby carriage with a very young child, maybe 6 months old or less. Even though there was no one behind my dad and both lines were long, she parked the baby carriage right next to his, almost pushing my siblings who were standing there. When she saw my little brother sitting in a milk crate inside the cart, her anger didn't go away. She just had to find another victim. She couldn't scream at my dad anymore, so she looked ahead and saw the couple. It was a couple with a younger daughter around 6 years old. They had a very full shopping cart, more than most people, and they were starting to scan their items. Karen number 1 then started complaining to my dad, still standing beside the couple, leaving her husband uncomfortably behind, about how there were people who go where they shouldn't, and that they shouldn't be shopping in that line. Then the woman had a rage outburst, pushing my sister aside and intervening between her and the family, demanding that they leave, saying they shouldn't even be allowed there. The cashier, the poor thing, was taken aback, as well as the family, and half the people there were watching the scene. She demanded that they leave and call the manager to demonstrate how absurd it was. The family offered to move to another line, but at that moment, the manager arrived and allowed the family to proceed with their shopping, informing the woman that she should wait. This entitled Karen went berserk. She returned to the baby carriage and started yelling and talking to my dad about it. She then tried to incite my dad to do something about it too. Her husband was quiet in the line, and my dad just nodded and tried tried to change the subject, and it's right about then that I decided to intervene, as I simply couldn't take this anymore. I said to her, "Look, my mom always taught me to never do that. It's extremely rude after all. How can you know if someone has a disability or not? My sister has autism, but she doesn't have a sign hanging on her. You would never know. So out of politeness, don't scream at people." Karen number 1 looks at me and says, "They don't have anything." At this point, she seemed embarrassed. Not as much as my poor sister, who by this point looked like a tomato. The Karen completely went insane by my comment, and I swear I made it in a polite manner. I don't like arguing with people like that, but that woman was extremely loud and disruptive. She started screaming and getting angry, took out her phone and shoved it in the cashier's face, filming everything, yelling that she was going to take everyone to court and that it was absurd, and that she was going to report it to the owners and all that talk. Then, when she realized her gesture wasn't getting her anywhere, she stormed off angrily and went to another checkout line. By the way, she went to the business checkout, where it's for people buying with business numbers, but somehow they allowed her to go through, I guess just to avoid any more drama. The cashier was visibly nervous. I felt really sorry for her, so I continued scanning my items anyways because my line was moving faster. One thing to note, in the right checkout line, I was basically with my back to my dad, facing the checkout on the other side. Then something caught my attention when a woman exclaimed out loud the word "what," and she basically screamed it at this point. The cashier on my right was serving an elderly couple, while behind them in line there was a mother who is Karen number 2 of this story, as well as her teenage daughter. The cashier repeated herself, and this time I heard her say that it might take a little bit longer because they were having a problem. Karen number 2 then said, "Did I ask you for something? Why are you telling me this?" The right cashier says, "Ma'am, I was just informing you." And before they could even continue any further, this second Karen cut them off. "I don't want to know. I didn't ask you for anything. Just do your job." The cashier didn't really know what to do, so she repeated that she was just letting them know it might take a little bit longer, and the woman went absolutely crazy. This second Karen was incredibly hostile, I would definitely say, while Karen number 1 just seemed crazy. I honestly would have been interested to see a fight between the two of them. The cashier looked at the manager who was behind me and then at me. I just shrugged and laughed because the situation was so surreal. I heard this Karen insulting and cursing the cashier to her daughter, but I didn't pay much attention, and I couldn't hear it clearly. But the cashier just smiled a little and continued her work. When I went to help my dad pack his things, I talked to the cashier who was filmed, and she admitted that she was shaking. My siblings and I laughed about the situation and tried to lighten the mood. In the end, she said something that was really nice. She said, "It's so nice to serve nice people after that. I was almost about to quit because I was so nervous, and I don't know how to handle this." We comforted her and then we left. Neither Karen 1 nor Karen 2 had left yet, and maybe this wasn't even the end of the story, but it was what I could see. And it was basically 2 Karens, one on each side, all in less than 10 minutes. And honestly, I really think that has to be a record. That is crazy that you would see 2 Karens at one time, both of them being incredibly snotty and snobbish in the checkout line. Like, first off, they need to chill out. Just be patient and wait your turn. Like, are you really in that big of a rush? I bet all they were gonna do when they checked out and left the store was go home and just sit on their phone. It's not like they have some important meeting to get to, like, come on. So good for the original poster for being the nice customer that all of us want to be. Those cashiers did not deserve to get treated that way, and the fact that you were kind to them and showed some level of comfort really does make a huge difference. My wife has become very depressed after she sent $25,000 to a scammer behind my back, and now I seriously don't know what to do. My wife of 8 years fell victim to a scam. In this scam, she sent roughly $25,000 to the scammer, who promised to transfer $10 million to her, and this was all so that she could help some people in Africa. So it was well intended, but she did not seek my counsel initially. After she sent $6,000, she then approached me and I pointed out the red flags in the story. She prayed about it and felt that God had told her it was the right thing to do, and this became a point of contention in our marriage for the last 3 months. She opened and maxed out 2 credit cards to keep it from me. She never lied to me when I asked her about it, but certainly avoided telling me the truth. This bled into our normal lives as well. She used to call and text me about her days, as well as about things that she has questions about. But now she's withdrawn from me, except for the day-to-day items that she needs to keep the family running. I honestly feel similar to having been cheated on, but it just feels more like a financial affair. I obviously have trust issues when it comes to money with her. I've opened separate accounts and taken her name off of my credit cards. There isn't anything left of our savings, including our emergency savings. I have cut cut my spending back tremendously. I used to eat out twice a week and bring food from home the other 3 days. But now, if I'm ever gonna eat out, I only bring food from home. I haven't bought a new video game in the last 3 months. This has impacted my life and limited what I can do. I understand that she is who I married and have no interest in divorce. I accept this hardship that she brought upon us. I just want to move beyond this and grow back together. This brings me to the point that I'm writing for advice about. She told the scammer she isn't sending any more money. They are still in communication, but the scam is starting to fall apart. My wife is becoming more and more depressed as it does. She says this gave her a lot of purpose in her life. I want to comfort her and do whatever I can to bring her out of her depression. I know that time will be my best friend, but I also know that I can do things to help out. But I'm still so angry at her for spending our entire savings and racking up credit card debt. How can I comfort her without condoning her actions? What should I do? Okay, first and foremost, I have so many questions. My first one being, why is she still in contact with the scammer? I mean, she's gotta know that this is a scam by this point, right? Like, it's all falling apart. She's seeing the dots get connected, and she's recognizing that, wait a second, this really is a bad thing. And sure, she's depressed and she feels guilty and all this other stuff, but if she really wants to find any kind of reconciliation about this, she needs to cut off this scammer like right away. This person stole $25,000 from her. She depleted your savings and maxed out some credit cards. If she wants to feel good about herself and start to climb out of this depressive episode, she needs to cut off communication with this person, because this person is not trying to help them. They are preying upon her kindness and her generosity just to try and suck more money out of your pockets. And you know what? I would be upset as well. I would be furious if my partner betrayed my trust like that, because there are so many reputable ways to actually help people locally in your community where you will know exactly where your money's going, and you won't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars in the process just to participate in those activities. Like, she made a life-changing financial decision behind your back. That is messed up on so many levels. So hopefully the two of you can figure this one out, because from the sounds of it, your wife messed up big time, and she needs to cut off this scammer right away if she ever wants to find help. An entitled Karen claims that she knows our prices better than we do, forcing me to scan and rescan all of her items at checkout, insisting that I was intentionally trying to mess up her order just so she wouldn't get the correct deals. And I've never been treated this way in customer service, and I'm so glad I never have to deal with her ever again. Here's what happened. So I was working yesterday, the day after Christmas, which I wouldn't normally be bothered about, but it was the first day of a giant sale going on in the store I work in. And I mean, it was giant. Items that were $3.95 instead of being upwards of $15. Items that were 50% off and 75% off. This was big. It only happens twice a year, so people tend to go crazy when this happens. The store was insanely busy, and we had too many people call out to monitor customers. So when our store should have only held 40 people, there were probably about 60 to 70 customers at any given point. So I was told to hop on a register to help control the line, as I'm usually pretty quick about getting people through and have become a master at the whole customer service voice and sucking up to people that come along. Well, as usual, I log into the point of sale system and call out to the customers that I can help whoever's next. This older lady comes up to the counter and places her basket on it. I reach out my hand to grab the first product in it when this other lady, we'll call her the entitled Karen of this story, snatches the basket away and literally shoved it back at the first lady and waved her back to the line. The entitled Karen said, "Excuse me, I was next. Did she call you by name? I didn't hear her say your name, which means I was next. Yeah, that's right, get back in line, because she didn't call your name, I was next. I have places to be and I have an appointment soon." And at this point, I was already dreading this transaction. I've been working retail long enough to know exactly who is going to be an easy customer and who is absolutely not going to be. My manager, by the name of Charlie, that's not their real name, who was working the point of sale system next to me, gave me a look implying that they knew what was about to go down. Putting on my best face of trying to be nice, I greet her and I say, "Hello, did you find everything okay?" The entitled Karen doesn't even answer me and literally just stares at me. She doesn't have a basket and isn't holding anything. I look around the counter in front of me to see if she had already placed something down and I might have missed it, but I didn't. The Karen pointed to the other end of the counter and made some kind of impatient gesture to my coworker and tapped her foot until her two baskets were brought over to me. I was already done with her, so I scanned everything as quickly as possible, just dropping her things in her bag instead of neatly placing them in like I usually do. The entitled Karen was glaring daggers at the pin pad mad in front of her as I was ringing everything up. I just assumed that she finally realized just how much she was buying. But boy was I absolutely wrong. I told the entitled Karen her total amount and it was around $80. It wasn't too bad for our store, considering that this probably would have cost around $150 to $200. She points to something on the pin pad and snaps at me. The entitled Karen says, "Why is this one $8.25? It should be 75% off." So I double check the item. Maybe I rang it up wrong. It's not unusual for this to happen, especially with how many deals we run at once. But it is in fact a 50% off item and not 75% off. So I tell her just that. She doesn't take that for an answer. She says to me, "No, I got all my things from the 75% off tower. It's supposed to be 75% off." I explained to her, "Miss, I understand that, but somebody must have put this back in the wrong place. It's a bit confusing because this collection is split between 50% off and 75% off towers. Half of it is on one side and the other half is on the other. Another customer must have just forgotten which tower they got it from and put it back on the wrong one. I promise what it's ringing up as is the correct price." The entitled Karen screeches, "No, I got it from the right half of the store, not the left. That means it's 75% off. Either adjust the price or I don't want it." I put it in the basket we have behind the counter for unwanted items. Clearly, this entitled Karen doesn't understand how barcodes work, and I don't have the authority to price adjust anything like that. And I'm definitely not going to keep arguing with her about this. This happens for another 2 products, all literally from the same collection, with me explaining that half are 50% off and the other half are 75% off. But she's getting more and more annoyed. And then we get to the full price items. And by this point, she is absolutely fuming. I try to explain that because she got these items from off the wall and not on a tower somewhere on the floor, that means they're full price, but part of the buy 3 get 1 free deal, but she isn't having it. This entitled Karen says, "But it's your big sale. It should be at least 50% off." Mind you, she hasn't even bought anything 50% off yet. Only the 75% off or the items that are marked $3.95. She goes on to say, "I thought these would be $3.95. No ma'am, only the products on the first table are that price. You got these ones off the wall in the second room. The second room doesn't even have any deals right now." And it's right about then that she said the magic words, "Where's your manager? I want to speak to your manager right now." I raise an eyebrow and point directly next to me, where Charlie has been listening this entire time. She's gone through 6 customers by now and is also getting annoyed just listening to this entitled Karen. Charlie finishes up her transaction and turns to me and the Karen. The entitled Karen says, "These aren't ringing up correctly. I got everything off the 75% off table." Once again, Charlie says everything that I already did. Someone must have put it back wrong. It was off the wall, blah, blah, blah. But the Karen is now arguing with her. The Karen says, "I know where I got everything." Charlie then says, "I was just up there a few minutes ago putting this product out. Like I explained and like how my friend here explained, this collection is split between 2 towers." Charlie then proceeds to list off exactly what parts of the collection are on the 50% off table and which are on the 75% off table, something that I wasn't quite sure about, so I never mentioned it to the Karen. So this Karen then says, "Fine, if it isn't 75% off or $3.95, then I don't want it. Take it off." So I do just that. I take off everything that isn't what she wants, take the products out of her bag, and put them behind me. I tell her the new total, which is about $35, and ask if she's paying with cash or a card. Her eyes narrow. Oh no, she isn't done yet. The entitled Karen then screeches, "Are those green ones still in there?" I check her bag and there's no green product. I turn around and look through the unwanted basket, pulling out a few teal items. "Is it these ones that you're looking for?" She then says, "Yes, I actually want those. Green is my favorite color." First of all, these items are body products. You know, something you smell. It doesn't really matter what color they are, as long as you like what it smells like. I have a really bad feeling that in an hour or 2, I'm gonna have this lady back in my store complaining about wanting a refund. Second of all, these are full price items. I really don't want to have to go through this whole thing all over again. I say to her, "Miss, are you sure? This collection is full price, the ones off the wall." She says, "Yes, I like green. I get those too." So I ring her up again, and the total again comes out to about $60. She eventually pays with card, and while she's waiting for it to load, she grabs the bag from behind the counter and lifts it up. It's important to note that because she originally had so much product at first, I was handed a large bag, which would be double bagged, with a board in the bottom for extra support, so it wouldn't rip as easily. And even though there's a giant sale right now, we never seem to run out of large bags. The Karen, of course, noticed this extra detail. She says to me, "Can I have an extra extra bag? I'm a bit distracted with the long receipt printing out, and I tell her not to worry, it's double bagged. Everything should be fine, and she didn't buy any glass. The entitled Karen then says, no, a small bag. I look at her and I say, oh, the cellophane bags? Sure, but just to let you know, we only have the skinny bags and not the large bags. I can give you a big stack of them though, if you want. The Karen then says, no, a small bag. I look up and I see her pointing at the bag that she's holding. Oh, she wanted a paper store bag. Why? They're so ugly, and that's what the cellophane is for, specifically for gift wrapping. I look over to Charlie for help because I don't have any small bags at my station right now, and neither does she. Charlie shakes her head and mutters to me that we don't have enough to do that today. I say to her, I'm sorry miss, we can't do that today. We are already running low on bags as it is. The Karen then says, okay, then I'll just give you back this extra one that I already have. I go on to say to her that it's doubled bag large for support, and that if she only has one, the bag may rip open and spill everywhere. The Karen then responds and says, I'll just give you the large bag for a small bag. I want a small bag. But again, I say it slowly, ma'am, I can't do that today. Look, there's one right there behind you. I'll just take that one. I look behind me and I see what bag she's talking about. She's right. There's an open and used bag on the counter. It's open and used and not put away because someone's product exploded inside of it. I give Charlie a look who rolls her eyes, grabbed the used bag, and practically shoved it towards the Karen. The Karen says, thanks. God, that's all I wanted. Have a blessed one. The second she was out of earshot, Charlie turned to me and congratulated me on keeping my cool. If I didn't desperately need the money, I would have 100% risked my job to scream and cuss her out. I then lived in fear for the rest of my shift that she would come back in and I would have to put up with her all over again. That entitled Karen was seriously obnoxious. Like, there's no reason to act like that at the checkout. Just get your stuff and leave. She was being so specific over stuff that was already on sale. Like, seriously, you couldn't just get your stuff and get out? Like, nobody wants to be there in the first place. The place is already swarming with customers as it is. Like, how can you not go up to the front desk and have some semblance of sympathy towards their situation? Like, think about it for a second. They have to deal with all these customers as well as all these nuanced prices that honestly could get very confusing. I mean, I know that if that was me, there's no way I would get any of that right. I would be looking at my manager the entire day, trying to figure out what these customers want, as well as trying to navigate all these sales that are going on. Like, honestly, that's a tricky job in and of itself. Anyone who says that it's not is completely foolish. Like, seriously, you've never worked retail if you want to say that. It is honestly just so embarrassing watching people act like this in a store. I mean, not only was she not called up to this one window, but she also literally pushed some lady away and was like, no, they didn't call your name, they called my name. Like, lady, what are you talking about? That is insane to me. Here you have a packed store and there's so many people all over the place. Like, this place is crawling with people. There's about 30 more customers than what they're used to at their max. And you've got this weird entitled Karen screaming in your face over like $4 items that probably are really cheap to begin with. I can honestly say that the original poster is way more patient than I am. There's no way I would have been that patient. I would have lost my cool and had to have walked away well before dealing with that lady. She was rude from the get-go. She was hyper aggressive about everything. She clearly just wanted to get the most money possible and cause the most damage to pretty much whoever was in front of her. So seriously, good for the original poster for keeping their cool, because what they dealt with was honestly completely unacceptable, and in no situation is that entitled Karen's actions ever justified. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. Today, I messed up by accidentally starting a cult. Here's what happened. So to start things out, this happened 15 years ago. I was living with my best friend and his family at the time. I was working full-time and going to school full-time, and he was just getting his business off the ground. My friend is absolutely brilliant. He's got a master's degree in some specialized engineering and can design robots and specialized parts for multi-million-dollar machines. His wife has a master's in accounting and maths and can do math that's miles above what I can even imagine. They are two of the most intelligent people I know, and yet they are pretty dumb. They've nearly fallen for rent scams, email phishing, and charity scams, as well as a few other very obvious blatant scams. I love them to death, but they are the type of people that need a lot of support just to get through things. They are also the nicest people I know. They have hearts of gold, regularly giving their time and money to helping people in need, even though their family and friends have helped them realize that they need to give less money when they have have huge debts. Because of this, they are surrounded by a group of amazing people. They have a very strong group of support. They both come from large, extended families who remain close, and they have tons of wonderful friends. They have helped me so much over the years. I would do anything to help them too. For the sake of anonymity, we'll call them John and Sarah. And obviously, these are fake names. John and Sarah were part of a pretty large church. I attended regularly, but I largely was on the outside looking in. Life kept me busy too. John and Sarah had been part of that church for their whole lives. Their parents had both been going there since before they were born. It was a regular church. The people were all nice, and they ran a lot of programs that helped people leaving domestic violence, and they held regular offerings in order to help members of the community who were also really struggling. If the church found out that someone in the town has lost a family member, they would reach out and make sure the family had food, clothing, support, and whatever else they needed. So everything was going really well. One day I was at the church, and the church announced that the pastor was leaving. That wasn't a surprise to anyone. He was old, and his two sons had both moved back to Europe, so his heart was overseas already. I didn't think much of it, but it started a chain reaction that made a lot of the attendees uncomfortable. I saw some political maneuvering happening in the church, and eventually the church named the new pastor a social worker who had just finished seminary. The new pastor had been attending their whole lives and was mostly tolerated by everyone. They were a member of the New Democratic Party, which has become a very left-wing party and began using the pulpit to spread very political messages. The church elders sincerely believed that the new pastor was the right choice in leading the church body down a path to reconciliation with the indigenous peoples, but quite honestly didn't realize they should have consulted us first. That's where the first rift started. The indigenous members of the congregation began to push back against some of the white savior messaging, and it spiraled from there. Within about 18 months, the church was split. Some were supporting the new pastor, other groups had held on to some right-wing garbage, but most people just wanted to go back to doing what the church had always done, without any political distractions. And this is where James comes in. James had been attending for about a decade, and he stood out at every moment. He was tall, he was a beautiful man, he was incredibly articulate, he oozed quiet charisma. When the dude talked, people listened. He was one of the head managers at the regional industry. The guy literally had it all. He drove a fancy car, he had a nice house, he even married the nicest lady ever. He was well admired and well respected, but he struggled with reading people's social cues. I and many others wondered at points if he was a sociopath, but after getting to know him, he was probably a bit on the spectrum. James was one of the active voices during the split. People began flocking to him during the meetings, and he was getting more and more calls to lead various groups and ministries. He called people on their garbage and found himself getting ostracized by the very people attempting to play group politics. He took it hard, but kept doing what he was doing. John and Sarah were the biggest supporters of James. James was really good with John and eventually contracted John to work for the regional industry. John eventually asked James to mentor him, and James agreed. John and James became very close, with Sarah becoming really close with James's wife. They saw each other multiple times per week. They always seemed to be planning their next activity or talking about something work-related. I would join them on occasion, but mostly kept to my studies and work. We would all be eating together 2 to 3 times a week. Everyone got along fine. Even today, I'm not friends with James, but we still message each other if we need something. At one of these meals, they were talking about the new pastor's political ramblings all during the sermons, and that's about when I came up with the worst suggestion in history. I said, "Honestly, James, why don't you just do your own Sunday service?" I said it flippantly. I wasn't really speaking seriously, but Sarah loved the idea. She got so excited. Even John liked it. James wasn't opposed. I mean, it logically made sense. It was decided by the end of the meal that we were going to make a home church. We wouldn't separate from the main church, but we would let James lead a separate Sunday service from his living room. So we got to work, mainly James, and started to spread the word. First week, 6 people showed up, and the second week had 25 people in total. And overall, we started to get about 15 people coming each week. They were mostly the young adults from the church. I mean, they craved to have some kind of stability. It grew from there, and James started a men's group, and his wife started a women's group. We did group activities, we created our own mini activities, we did everything. I wasn't super involved, and I ended up leaving for about 2 to 3 months for work after everything had started up. I got an email during that time away asking to meet with the elders of the original church. They are super nice guys, and most of them are still good friends of mine, so I agreed to meet with them once I got back. back. At that meeting, they asked a lot of questions. They asked who was the spiritual leader of John, and I told them that James was. They asked me who John's emotional support was, and I also said James was as well. They asked me who John's financial support came from, and I told them the same thing. It was all James. I realized during that talk the mistake that we had made. John was completely reliant on James for everything. It wasn't just John either. There was about a dozen other people who were in the exact same position. Their entire lives were dependent on one man, and that one man had the ability to completely destroy them. It went well beyond that too. There was no accountability. James had even begun moving a bunch of the young guys into his rental properties. He had one house for the young women and one house for the young men. Him and his wife would go there daily to guide them and help them. There were a bunch of other red flags that we had missed. I knew James pretty well at this point, and I knew he had done that to other people already. James had a temper and had no problem bringing consequences to people who crossed them. The first guy had done lazy work for James, and the second guy attempted to make some advances at James's daughter. Both relied on James for work and emotional support, and both found themselves out of work and ostracized from the community when they crossed James. The realization of how much power James had really scared me. James was a good guy, he still is, but there was too much control and influence in his hands without any accountability or checks in place. He ran a community by himself without anyone being able to stop him. I was legitimately afraid. I realized I screwed up in helping get this group off the ground. It wasn't wrong to have a group. It was wrong not to have safeguards in place. I talked to John and Sarah about it that evening, and John was about to brush it off, but the realization of how vulnerable they were freaked Sarah out to the point where she begged John to expand his business well beyond the industry contacts. John thankfully agreed with her, and that started a process in which they reestablished social connections beyond the group. I called James to set up a time to meet with him to confront him, but the elders had beat me to it. James was freaked out to realize he had accidentally started a cult, so he began the work to legitimize the group. The elders worked with him, and the group formally disconnected from the church and joined a denomination of churches to provide oversight and accountability. James kept the group going, but did it with support. The group is still going strong today. John and Sarah are still a part of it. James stepped back last year due to burnout, but is still part of it as well. I'm not a part of it, but I still am besties with John and Sarah. And James was even a groomsman at my wedding, with Sarah being a bridesmaid. But thankfully, we can all look back on it now and laugh at the time that we accidentally started a cult. Yeah, that's really scary. I can't imagine looking up one day and realizing what I accidentally started. Like, I'm sure nobody meant to start a cult. It just kind of happened out of nowhere. Like the stars aligned and then suddenly, bam, here's a cult. But at least they had the insight to say, wow, wait a second, this is not good. We need to adjust course like right now. Otherwise, this seriously could get out of hand. So good for the original poster, as well as pretty much everyone in this story, for having a good head on their shoulders. Because under different circumstances and leadership, this could have ended very badly. An entitled father lets his son try to open my locker at a gym as a form of entertainment, just so he can then run off and go work out. And as a result, the craziest set of circumstances and unfolding of events happens right in front of me. And I've never been happier to escape a situation in my life. Here's what happened. So today, like most weekdays, I went to the gym. In said gym are locker rooms, where one can shower after getting all sweaty after lifting weights. I had just finished the dry portion of my workout, and I went down to the locker room. As a rule, I try and avoid spending time in the locker room. There's a whole bunch of nope in there. Just get in, do what I need to do, and then get out of there. Today, I unfortunately ran into one of the most blithely ignorant humans I have ever encountered in my life, as well as who I can presume to be his son. I managed to get the holy grail of lockers today, and I was very pleased to have it. It was number 69 for those curious. Yes, I am aware I'm a very overgrown child, and no, I refuse to apologize for this. So I just come down to the locker room as a sweaty and stinky mess, just trying to grab my bathing suit so I could change and do cardio in the pool. Unfortunately for my intentions, there was a man who was about my age in his mid-30s, trying to get his son, who was about 8 years old, away from my locker. His son, however, had no intentions of going anywhere, and started to do one of those blood-curdling screeches that most nonverbal children do when they're upset. I'm a little puzzled why there's an enraged child trying to open my locker while this guy stands there just watching. So I wait for the man to disengage the child from my locker, and then I wearily approach and open it. This guy then goes, "Oh, thank God. I was afraid we wouldn't have this locker. He gets really upset when we don't get the locker that he likes." Now, if I didn't didn't already have all my stuff in that locker and wasn't trying to get into the pool before my heart rate went down, I probably would have obliged him. But as things were, I wasn't having it. Sorry man, I kinda just need to change and get into the pool. I said that to him, and then I proceeded to get out of my sweaty clothes, jump into a bathing suit, and grab the stuff I need for the pool before shutting, locking, and scrambling the lock. I then ran away to swim about 500 meters and then soak for just a little bit. About 20 to 25 minutes later, I'm all done with my swim, and I feel rather noodly, as one does after a good swim, and I come back into the locker room where there's a familiar looking boy trying different combinations, trying to get into my locker. Only there's no adult present, just the kid in the entire aisle of lockers making frustrated sounds every time the combination doesn't work. And it was right about then that I knew this was not going to be a normal interaction. Now, I'm angry on this kid's behalf, and honestly astounded that the guy thought this was the heads up play. I'm also acutely aware of the consequences of even touching this kid and something just possibly going wrong, so I promptly decided to pass that buck right along. So I called the front desk and I explained the situation, and they promised a staff member would come over right away. Eventually, a male staff member comes in. I see him and I flag him down and indicate that the kid is still valiantly attempting to brute force the lock to try and get my locker open. The staff member attempts to get the kid's attention, but that definitely did not work. The staff member then tries to pick the kid up and promptly gets his eardrums blown out by this kid's shriek. The staff member promptly puts the kid back on the ground and withdraws. He promises help is on the way. The kid then goes right back to trying different combinations. My gym is rather fancy. It includes not only a regular daycare, but a special needs daycare as well. Said special needs daycare staffer was actually concerned when the kid wasn't dropped off and wound up heading down to the locker room to retrieve the kid. So the first guy comes in and asks that everyone be aware a female staff member was entering the locker room itself, and this poor woman comes in staring at the floor. The first guy guides her over to the kid, and then she brings out her secret weapon, some sort of fidget toy. After a minute, the woman gets his attention and shows him the toy. The kid promptly takes the toy from the woman and makes not a peep when the woman scoops him up and carries him out. Meanwhile, I'm standing there dripping wet, thinking to myself, what just happened? The first guy has to unlock my locker for me because the kid's attempts to get the lock open had scrambled whatever I'd put in the first place, and then he asked me to come talk to the staff after I shower. I do just that, and then I'm brought up into the manager's office so I can relate what exactly happened. Midway through my story, a woman about bursts into the manager's office, frantically demanding to know where her son is. The manager calms the woman down enough to listen and asks her to take a seat, and her son will be brought right down. Then the manager grabs the phone to call someone and asks that the boy be brought to his mother in the manager's office. The mother begins to stress vomit words out. They weren't precisely coherent, but from what I could piece together, she went on to explain that the father dipped out on the mother as well as the son after it was found out that their son had special needs and was likely never to speak again. He wanted nothing to do with the kid. Time had passed by, and eventually the father reaches out, feeling guilty apparently, and starts taking the kid on weekdays every now and again. The mother actually gave the father money to take the kid to a petting zoo today, and the next thing she knows, this gym is calling her, saying they found her son all alone in a locker room and are having trouble locating the father, and she was listed as an emergency contact. The whole time this is playing out, I'm just standing here like, man, I just want to go home. Then the staff member from before enters the office with the kid, who is promptly reunited with his mother. The mother is overjoyed. I think the kid was happy too. It's kind of hard to tell. The staff member retreats, and I think to myself, for the love of God, take me with you. But that was wishful thinking. It was at this moment that a trainer who looks exactly like Ivan Drago is escorting the father into the office, looking at this dude like he's absolute scum. And that's when the shouting started to begin. The mother pops off and says, "How could you be so irresponsible? He is your son." The father then goes, "He was fine, perfectly happy standing there to try and open that jerk's locker," pointing straight at me. "You left him alone in the locker room?" "Listen, I needed to work out. None of this was my idea anyways. What difference does it make if we didn't go to that stupid petting zoo? It's all the same to that stupid kid." After a solid minute of shouting between both parties, the kid starts to screech and both parents are going at it hammer and tongs. I catch the manager's eye and tip my head towards the door. She rolls her eyes but gives me a nod. And trust me, I wasted no time fleeing the scene. Yeah, the father in this story is an absolute idiot. You seriously just left your kid alone so you could work out, and you left him in a locker room where strange men come in and out that you don't know in the slightest? That's like saying, okay, go let anyone be your babysitter, have fun. And also, this guy knew for a fact that someone else was already using that locker. Like, why would you then let your kid go around and try and fiddle with the locks, possibly breaking something in the process? Like, this entitled father was really just completely out of line. I don't blame the mother for freaking out, as well as getting up in his face and telling him exactly how it is. You can't just say, hey, we're going to a petting zoo, and then suddenly be like, oh, just kidding, we're gonna go work out instead. That is incredibly inappropriate, and there's no excuse for that. But honestly, I find this story really funny. This guy got wrapped up into something that he absolutely didn't want any part of. But in the end, he was able to escape that situation without catching any of the strays the mother was throwing around, which is a lot better than what this father could say. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. Am I the jerk for ditching my girlfriend at a 5K race because I wanted to get a better time and not have to walk the entire time? Here's what happened. So my girlfriend and I have been together for about 2 years now. We do live together, and about 9 months ago, I picked up running as a hobby, and I have since grown quite fond of it. I currently run about an average of 25 miles a week. A few months ago, I decided I wanted to try a 5K or a 10K, and after some Google searching, I found a 5K in my city that did look kind of fun. I registered for it, I paid the fee, and decided to start training specifically for it. I mentioned it in passing to my girlfriend that night, and she asked if she could come too. I was psyched about the idea of running a 5K with her, and I said yes, but warned her that she would probably want to start training because I was going for a sub 27-minute time, which might be tough for a complete beginner. She said she would like to train with me, which again sounded fun, so the next morning I woke up at 5 in the morning for my run as I usually do, but my girlfriend was not up for it and told me that she'd go later. This continued for a week, and then 2 weeks, and finally I managed to get her up once for a run. She was miserable the entire time, and I basically didn't get any exercise. Last Friday, the day before the race, I asked if she was really up for it. She insisted that she was. She then told me that she would just gallop and skip through it, just like she used to when she would do her mile runs when she was in middle school. I asked her to demonstrate what a skip gallop was, and she showed me this bizarre side-stepping gallop as if she had a cast on her legs. I told her it seemed like a really inefficient way to run, but she insisted it always worked for her. Saturday was the day of the race, and right out of the gate she utilized her skip gallop strategy. 2 minutes in, I realized that she was already completely gassed. She started asking me to wait so we could walk together. I apologized, I told her that I loved her, and left her behind to finish the race. I ended up with a time of 26 minutes and 43 seconds, beating my goal entirely. After the race, I tried calling her, but she wouldn't pick up. When I made my way back to the car, I realized that she had left me. I had to take an Uber home, and right when I walked in the door, I was met with her shrieking about how I ditched her. I tried to calm her down and explain that she kind of brought it on herself, but she was not interested whatsoever. Yesterday, she gave me the silent treatment all day. Do I deserve what I'm getting here? What should I do? This is hilarious to me. I'm just gonna say it, and I'm sorry if that's mean. Did your girlfriend really think that she could run a 5K just by skipping through it? I mean, that sounds more exhausting than actually running the race. Like, that is really funny. She thought she could get away with that, first and foremost. But also, why would she be like, no, wait, you should walk with me? Like, no, I'm not gonna walk with you. I've been training for this. I've been training specifically to get under 27 minutes. I worked really hard for this, and I've been waking up at 5 in the morning every single morning just to get ready for this. Like, it is extremely selfish for her to expect her boyfriend to throw everything out the window just so she can have someone to walk with in this race. He has literally been training for this. That is so unbelievably selfish. Not to mention the fact that she left this guy at the race and forced him to get an Uber just to get home. Like, that is just totally unfair. I mean, she did know what she was getting into, right? I mean, there is a reason why your boyfriend was getting up early in the morning to train for this. So honestly, I don't think the original poster is a jerk in this situation. They did not do anything wrong. Their girlfriend is being a weirdo, and truly, this is all on them. Because if they wanted to have a good time at this race, they should have done more to train and get ready for it. And that fault does not fall on the original poster. Instead, it falls squarely on the shoulders of his girlfriend. Am I the jerk for purposefully letting my sister hit a pole after she was looking at her phone all the time while driving? Here's what happened. So my little sister, let's call her Christy, that's not her real name, has recently gotten her license. She obviously thinks she's an incredible driver and can handle a car no matter what. After only 4 months of driving, she has already become one of those girls who put their phone between their thighs device to be able to look at messages and access it quickly while driving. It drives us all insane, to be honest, and my family and I have talked to her about it multiple times, but it goes in one ear and out the other. Yesterday, she did it again while driving my car, and this is when we were out getting groceries. She had been distracted for almost the entire drive and even continued to look at her phone when I told her to cut it out. When she was about to roll into a parking spot, she probably got a message and looked down at her phone. I noticed that she was about to ram into a lantern, and when I was sure that she wouldn't cause damage to other vehicles, I decided to just let her run into it instead of intervening. It was a huge shock to her, and she just sat there completely still for like 15 seconds, processing what had just happened. It wasn't until I spoke up that she finally spoke again. I said to her, "Will you please learn to leave your phone alone now?" The first thing that she said was, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" And she said this in an absolute baffled tone, and I told her straight up that I didn't tell her so she'd learn a lesson. She was absolutely livid and tried to push all the blame onto me for not intervening, but I told her it would still have the same outcome had I not even been there, and that ultimately she, as the driver, is the responsible party for not only her but all passengers in the car. Christy was absolutely gobsmacked that she messed around and found out, even more so when I told her that she would have to account for half the damages caused in an accident that the insurance wouldn't cover, and in total it was shy of just about $200. Overall, I had a blown out light, a bent bumper, and a dent in the hood, plus a few scrapes on my car. She went completely wild, but I told her that she's lucky I'm not making her pay for everything since she was driving the car while being on the phone. A few days after the insurance gave me the sum, I told Christy what she owes me, which she paid immediately. She told me that apparently because of this, she won't be able to go on a trip with her friends, and that I'm a massive jerk. She also added that she would have learned her lesson otherwise too. I personally doubt that she would have, and honestly, distracted drivers are the worst. So honestly, am I the jerk for purposefully letting my sister run into a pole when she was clearly looking at her phone? You are not the jerk, and you taught her a valuable lesson. First off, this is all on her. If she's gonna be the one driving the car, she needs to keep everybody else safe in the car. This is all her fault, literally nobody else. And you know what? It was smart of you to let her run into that pole. It's better to run into that as opposed to some kind of bystander who didn't see the car coming. I know when I'm driving, I put my phone down and I don't even look at it. Like, I literally just put it to the side and I say, okay, this can wait until I get home. It's not an emergency. Let's just drive and focus on the road. So when it comes to Christy, it is literally a choice for her to look at her phone on her lap. So for her to call you the jerk when you didn't say anything with her running into that pole, honestly, that's not your fault. You were letting her learn a lesson pretty much the hard way. So if anything, good for you for being the better older brother, because your little sister was being an idiot, and this is a valuable lesson she won't forget anytime soon. Am I the jerk for pretending like I don't have money so that my family won't bother me? Here's what happened. So my wife and I partially retired with $4 million in savings. I am a systems engineer and my wife is a registered nurse. I still work part-time and I contract out, but less than 20 hours a week, and my wife is fully retired. We are both very frugal people, and we try to save where we can. I've also made it clear to my wife to never tell my family that we have money, and to pretend that we are just absolutely broke. Her family knows we do well, but they never ask for money. My family, though, won't stop asking for money. My mom, my dad, and my brother are terrible with money. My dad and brother both work oil and gas, which results in a few fat years of tons of money coming in, followed up by layoffs. Not saying the layoffs are their fault, but they have never seen anything, so they run up credit cards to pay for everything. My parents have borrowed against their house so many times, they effectively haven't paid anything towards the principal, and they have had their house for 35 years. They should be retired but can't, and my dad recently had to go back to work as a school bus driver because they have so much debt and no money. My brother inherited their spending habits and has his own alcohol struggles. He's currently going through his second divorce. I didn't tell my son not to tell his grandparents we recently retired, and they found out from him recently and have been calling me livid because we pretended to be broke for years, but clearly if we can retire, we have savings. I didn't tell them because I know the results are they would just ask us for money constantly. They have on several occasions when we went on vacation, and they found out via Facebook, and since then we learned not to post about it, with them eventually knocking on our door asking for money. But we lied and told them that we won some money, but we had spent it all on the vacation. Am I obligated to help them? I don't feel so, because both my parents and brother made lots over their career, but my dad is in his 70s and still working. I'm sure they are contacting me to ask for money, but am I the jerk if I continue to pretend like I have none? What should I do? Honestly, I don't think you're the jerk at all, and I don't think it's dishonest to say, sorry, I don't have any money to give you. Like, you are not obligated to pay off their debt. And you know what? If they found out you have $4 million in savings, then you better believe they're gonna try and get a piece of that pie. They have terrible spending habits. Why would you give them money just so they can then spend that like crazy? I mean, personally, if I was in your shoes and I had that much money in my savings, I would be hesitant to give any kind of money to someone who's just gonna spend it all over the place. I also think, personally, just in my opinion, that you don't have to be secretive about how hard both of you have worked. This is your money, and you and your wife get to decide what you spend it on. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would not be afraid of spending money. You can still have a frugal lifestyle, but I just don't think it's a good idea to not spend your money simply to hide the fact that you have a lot of money stored up in your savings. And this really could be as simple as you telling them, hey, we've retired and we're on a fixed income. And that is literally it. How much you have is none of anybody else's business. And if I were you and I was in your situation, I wouldn't tell anybody about how much money I have in my bank account. So hopefully this works out, and hopefully your family can stop bothering you, because at the end of the day, it's your money and no one deserves it except for you and your wife. Am I the jerk for leaving my niece's wedding reception early, as well as taking my gift back? Here's what happened. So I'm a 45-year-old male and I have a 22-year-old niece who just got married last weekend. And let me tell you, the family is blowing up with drama right now because of what myself as well as my wife did. I must preface this by saying my family can be pushovers. They really all hate conflict and will definitely let themselves be run over by someone else in order to not cause a fight. But you know what? I am not that way. The wedding was on a Saturday. It was a Catholic ceremony in a church at 3:30 p.m. The reception area was about 15 minutes away from the church. The reception was set to start at 5 o'clock. Maybe this was stupid on the venue people, but they wouldn't open the bar or bring around the appetizers until the bride and groom arrived. Service ended at around 4:30 and everyone was told to go to the reception. The wedding party had a limo to take them, and a separate limo took the parents, grandparents, and siblings. The couple is young and decided against family in the wedding party. It was 4 sorority sisters and fraternity brothers on each side. My wife and I drove. We got to the venue around 4:50 with the first family limo arriving around that time. By 5 o'clock, I would say all 150 guests were there, but there was still no bride or groom. The wedding coordinator was getting really upset as it was now 5:45 and there was still no wedding party. We are all just standing around with no food or drinks. Someone was able to get a hold of the maid of honor around this point, and apparently the bride and groom told the limo driver to stop at the liquor store and then drove around on the highway for an hour so the wedding party could get trashed. At around 6 o'clock, the maid of honor said they should be arriving in the next 20 minutes. My wife and I looked at each other and said we are out. We thought it was horribly disrespectful for them to do that to all of their guests. I told my brother that we were leaving and taking the gift with us. He tried to plead by saying, they're just kids, let them have fun. But I was having none of it. A few days after, I got an apology text from my niece, followed up by her asking for the gift again. I said that I felt very disrespected and I didn't want to give a gift anymore. She then snapped and called me a jerk. So now I really need to know, are we the jerks for leaving this wedding reception after she went around town just to get wasted for over an hour? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. Everybody was shepherded over to this reception to be there at 5 o'clock, to then have to sit around there for an hour, all because the wedding party wanted to get trashed before they go to the event, is honestly so disrespectful to everybody who showed up. Like, seriously, do they not see that everybody's waiting on them? They can't get any food, they can't get any drinks. They're literally waiting on this one group of people to come into the wedding reception. Like, seriously, that was so disrespectful to everybody there. So no, I don't think you're the jerk. You can clearly see that she apologized and was like, okay, I'm sorry. By the way, where's that gift you were gonna give me? Like, we can clearly see that she was only sorry to try and get that gift. And instead of apologizing again, she decided to snap and call you a jerk. So honestly, that's all you really need to know about her. She was in it for the gift, and the rest of the guests just did not matter to her. So honestly, good for you for taking a stand, because your niece's behavior was absolutely atrocious, and there's no way that should have happened. An entitled Karen tries to buy my pet lizards off of me, and when I tell her no, they are not for sale, she then tries to steal them. And I'm still in shock of this entitled Karen's audacity, and I still can't believe that she tried this. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I have 2 bearded dragons. One is expensive and very pretty looking. It's yellow with orange and a very grayish blue. He's also much larger than most dragons, which makes him a fun opportunity for people who want to take a photo of him. I also have a female named Bella, who is a little less pretty, but we all love her the same. Now, when it comes to me, I have a few disorders, like social anxiety and bipolar manic depression, so these lizards are my lifeline. They're now officially service animals, and I can take them anywhere I want legally, and it is safe. The story takes place in a pet-friendly mall. I have a stroller to carry these guys in that doubles as a backpack, and they're very well behaved. They don't jump out, and I can zip them up if need be. Now, people who know bearded dragons know they can be put together in the same cage or in places together with no real supervision. My bearded dragons are more friendly than most. They don't care about other dragons or animals, and there's a divider in the stroller. So I'm walking with my friend around GameStop, and I just had a pleasant interaction with the lady working there. She took some photos and we discussed reptiles because she has a gecko at home. We traveled a few times around the mall, stopped at the food court to grab some food, and after we finished eating and continued walking, I was stopped by a lady who didn't look like a Karen off the bat, who also had a tubby, red-faced little boy who looked very upset. The mom then introduces herself, and for the sake of the story, we'll call her Karen. And the first interaction goes like this. The Karen says to us, "Hey, can we see your bearded dragons? My son really likes them and he thinks they're pretty." I say to her, "Of course, let me unzip their carrier so you can take a look at them." Her son kind of squeaks, and he's very excited, which is the exact opposite of how he looked earlier. So I take out Bella because she is the most friendly and has a lot less anxiety. The Karen then says, "Can my son hold him? He's never held one before." As a side note, they do have harnesses and leashes on because when I let them in the grass on the floor, they do like to trot around. The son then kind of retorts that he would rather hold the other one because he's bigger and prettier. I then say, "I'm sorry, I'd rather you not hold him. He's a little bit more sensitive and I don't like him getting scared with new people holding him." The Karen then said, "Oh, it's fine. He can hold him. He's very nice with animals. He almost has a special connection with them, you know." I was holding Bella at this point and started to sense that this is gonna get out of hand. So I went to grab the carrier to put her back, and that's when it finally happened. This entitled Karen looks at me and says, "Look, my son really likes him, so would it be possible for me to buy both of them from you?" And I was honestly blown away by her request. At this point, I'm zipping up the carrier and getting ready to put it on my back. I then say to her, "No, I'm not willing to sell them to you just because your son is really interested. Also, do you not understand how much money and work these guys are?" The entitled Karen then clapped back. She said to me, "If you don't sell me them, I'll call the police and say you stole them." She then lunged for the bag in my hands before I had a chance to put it on, and I just barely managed to turn before she grabbed it. Now at this point, my friend was gone, going to get security about halfway through this, and it's right about at this moment that one of the security guards comes up. The entitled Karen then starts screaming, "She stole them! She stole my pets! Those are mine! She saw my carrier and she stole all of it!" The guard just sighs and asks the lady to please leave or she will have the police called on her again. She's arguing with the guard about how it's real this time, and the guard's just staring at her with utter disbelief. Also, her son at this point was crying about how he didn't get a hold of my lizards and how he won't get to have one for a pet. Thankfully, the guard at this point had just told us to go do our thing because he had this handled, and that it's not too uncommon that this has happened with this person before, while also explaining that if this person does come back for us and doesn't leave, that we should let them know as soon as possible. So we did just that and we left. And as we were leaving, she was in handcuffs in a police cruiser with a lady with a service dog standing not too far behind talking to another police officer. That is a crazy situation. Can you imagine bringing your pet to a mall only to then have someone literally try to steal it from you? Like seriously, I think I would lose my mind if someone tried that on me. There's no way that's gonna happen in the slightest. And this is especially bad for the original poster. Now granted, I've never heard of a lizard being a service animal, but hey, if it fits the bill and it is something that you really do need, then by all means have the service animal with you. And worst of all, it sounds like this is not the first time that this lady's done this. I mean, that is an entirely different level of crazy, to be completely honest. Because what if the situation was reversed? What if the security guard really did believe this crazy Karen and the original poster lost their pets right then and there? But thankfully, the security guard knew what was happening here, and clearly they've dealt with this crazy lady many times before. So thankfully, justice was served on this entitled crazy Karen, because trying to take someone else's pet, especially a service animal, is unbelievably disgusting, and she absolutely deserved to go to jail. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. Am I the jerk for not wanting to split my jackpot winnings with my husband's friend? Here's what happened. So I'm a 30-year-old female and I played the lottery for the first time last year when everyone else was talking about the Powerball jackpot. Since then, I've been playing casually, only spending a few dollars a week. I occasionally won a few bucks and never really expected to win anything big, but it was nice to dream as I had a ton of debt and have been struggling a lot. Fast forward a few months ago, and I checked the winning numbers one night against my ticket and it matched with my numbers perfectly. Initially, I didn't believe it, and I thought there had to be a mistake, so I told my husband, and we checked it like a dozen times, and I was right. We actually won. This is life-changing, multi-generational money. We instantly agreed to keep the news to ourselves and wait a few months before we did anything. The past few months have been an incredible high, filled with disbelief, and though it has been difficult, we have managed not to make any large purchases or change our lifestyle in the slightest. We fantasize about what to do with our money, but the time to claim is drawing near, so we have begun having more practical discussions about how to claim it and what to do with it. While discussing it, my husband brought up the idea that he thinks it'll be a good idea to split the money with his best friend and business partner by the name of Tommy. Tommy is not his real name. My husband and Tommy have been best friends since they were in middle school, and they have done everything together ever since then. Together, they've started businesses, they've worked together, they've invested money, have moved to the same town, and have often dreamed about our families making it big together. Since we have taken risks together and they are so close, my husband feels it's fair to give him 1/3 of the cash prize. And his reasoning is that for starters, we are not going on this new journey in life alone. And secondly, it's going to be suspicious to make all this money suddenly, and it will just be more easy to explain if Tommy suddenly makes money as well, since we do everything together. I, however, feel it's risky to share that we have come into this money because Tommy's family tends to be more flashy and they like to show off, and I don't fully trust that they will keep it quiet or be modest enough to not raise suspicion. This is very important because I've seen community members attack people with far less money just because they feel entitled to it. This could jeopardize our safety, so I want to avoid it if at all possible. Also, I'm not really comfortable with his plan to add Tommy and his wife as members of our LLC just to claim the prize. And this is because I think it could have them feeling more entitled to a bigger chunk or just trying to take all the money in general. My husband thinks I'm being selfish and he won't enjoy our newfound wealth if his friend isn't living the same lifestyle, but I think we could find a way to later give them some money after figuring out a way to explain how we came into money without telling them that we won the lottery. And I honestly have no idea how to do that yet. So honestly, am I the jerk for not wanting to tell them that we won the lottery and for not wanting to split the money with anyone except for me and my husband? Am I being selfish here? What should I do? First and foremost, in my personal opinion, winning the lottery has got to be both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because suddenly you have money that will last you a lifetime. You will never have to worry about rent, food, fixing your car, medical expenses, anything like that. If you play your cards right and you're smart with that money, you will have exactly what you need for the rest of your life. Now, also in my personal opinion, when it comes to telling other people about this money, I really don't think it's a good idea to bring anyone else into this that could possibly stick their hands in your prize. Like, I think your husband's intentions are very noble, but I really think it's misguided. This money is literally going to change your life. If you think you can still live in the same house you've lived in before, you've got another thing coming. Like, this is why people move states when they win the lottery. Everybody around them, and I mean everybody, is about to find out that you are a millionaire and you've got buckets of money, and you better believe that everybody and their mother is going to want a piece of that. So personally, I am definitely with the original poster here. I don't think it's a good idea to bring your friend in on this. I also think if you haven't done it already, it's time to get an attorney and a financial advisor, because unless you want this money to basically ruin your life, you're going to need both of those to really make sure you do this all correctly, because otherwise it's just going to be a nightmare, and I can only see this getting worse well before it gets any better. Am I the jerk for taking back my sister's invite after she refused to go since I didn't invite my mom to my wedding? Here's what happened. So when I was 16, my parents split due to my mom having an affair with a friend of my dad's. I was at the age where I could decide who to live with as well, and I chose my dad. My sisters chose to shuffle back and forth. Me and my sisters have never really been close afterwards. I have not spoken to my mom since I graduated back in 2014, and my sisters have been complaining about it ever since. My sisters don't like my stepmom while I love her, so they don't come to my dad's much, much, which we are both honestly fine with. I don't speak to them unless necessary around the holidays. I did not attend my older sister's wedding due to the tension, so I've never even met her husband. I'm currently engaged, and our wedding is in December. I plan to invite both my sisters for the sake of my fiance, who wanted them there. My younger sister isn't coming because I did not invite my mom, and instead have my stepmom involved, and I'm honestly happy with that. My older sister pretends to be this big family person on social media, so I think for appearances she was going to come. After I sent the invite, she called and said it wasn't right to phase our mom out, considering her side of the family will be there. I said I didn't ask for her advice on the guest list. She said in solidarity with our other sister, as well as our mother, she is not going to attend. So I said, okay, great. And this was about a month ago. Last week, I got a call from a random number who ended up being my brother-in-law, saying he spoke with my sister and she wanted to come to the wedding. I said that isn't what she originally said. He said she was just trying to force something, and that was wrong and she wanted to attend. I said it was way too late as the offer had been taken away. He said that family was important and that it would be a good step. And then I asked who in the world he even was, as I've never even met the guy. He said my sister is too proud to call, so he did it for her. I said it was too bad her ego was that big that she would allow her husband to do her dirty work. So still there was no invite. I pretty much told the guy that family wasn't that important, given I don't even know who he is, and that his wife tried to threaten me. So I was honestly done with it. He said a few other things about family, and I just laughed at him, telling him I don't even know him. They obviously want a free dinner, and he should grow a pair and get his back from my sister. My fiance heard most of the conversation and said I was being a jerk to him, even if my sister was being toxic. I told them that the jerk thing is to call on your wife's behalf about an issue that literally doesn't concern you. And now I was just throwing their toxicity right back in their face. So I need to know, am I the jerk for taking back my sister's invite to my wedding? I don't think you're the jerk. It really does sound like your sister's playing games. She both wants to take the high ground while also securing some spot in your wedding. But honestly, she can't have it both ways. She needs to make a choice. Either be there and stand in solidarity with her mom, or come to the wedding and be somewhat of a sister that she has clearly never been in your upbringing. And it is really showing that she had her husband come in and literally do her dirty work for her. I think you're 100% right in that regard. If she really wanted to come along, she should have apologized, said, hey, I'm really sorry, and then asked politely if she can come to the wedding. But instead, she had some third-party husband that you've never even met try and accomplish this for her. All the while, he's spouting off all this stuff about family. And I totally agree with the original poster. The irony of this situation is that you've never even met this guy. Like, literally, he is a stranger trying to lecture you about family. Like, is he kidding? So no, I don't blame you for taking back this invitation. She was being incredibly toxic, and you know what? This is the result of her actions. Am I the jerk for selling my late grandmother's house against my brother's wishes, despite his childhood dream of always wanting to live there? Here's what happened. Last year, my grandmother passed away, leaving behind a reasonably large house in a small coastal town. This house is something you would see on a postcard, a lovely Victorian-era home with a view of the sea. It has been in our family for generations, and it holds an immense amount of sentimental value for all of us, particularly my younger brother. Since we were children, my younger brother has always been enchanted by that house. He would spend hours exploring every nook and cranny, daydreaming about the life he'd lead there. As we grew older, his dream never wavered. He wanted to live in that house. But when our grandmother's will was read, it turned out she had left the house to me. I was living in the city, happily settled with my own family and career. My brother, on the other hand, was still living paycheck to paycheck, constantly in between jobs, and often borrowing money from our parents or me. Seeing the state of the house after our grandmother's passing, it was clear it needed serious renovation. There were issues with the plumbing, the roof needed repairs, and the old wiring was a safety hazard. All these renovations were necessary to make the house habitable, and they would cost a significant amount of money that my brother didn't have and I wasn't in a position to provide, without jeopardizing my own family's financial stability. Taking all of this into account, I decided selling the house was the best option. The housing market was favorable, and we stood to make a considerable profit from the sale. My plan was to split the money equally. I wasn't in dire need of all the money as we lived somewhat comfortably, but my brother would have a substantial amount to clear his debts and could rent or even buy a small place where he could start fresh. My brother proposed that I sell the house to him at a considerably lower price than the market value. I declined this offer as the amount he was offering was significantly less, and it was almost all of his savings, leaving very little left in terms of living cost and expenses. I told him that it wasn't a good idea for him, nor was it beneficial to me and my family, whereas selling it for a much higher value on the open market and splitting the money with him meant we both walked away with much better financial situations. My brother was heartbroken and accused me of betraying him and selling off his dreams. I tried to explain my perspective, that it was for his own good, but he saw it as me being pragmatic at the cost of his feelings. He stopped talking to me, and the rest of our family took his side, saying that I was selfish. This whole situation has left me riddled with guilt. I never wanted to upset my brother, but I genuinely believed, and I still believe, that selling the house was in our best interest, especially his. And also, Ben had offered me about 30% of the market value, so me selling it to him would not have been the same as just splitting it 50-50. And while my brother did inherit other belongings, the value was much less than the house. My grandma knew he wasn't well off when it came to financial decisions, and did not leave it to me with the intent of it being kept around for generations. So am I the jerk for selling my grandmother's house, even though my brother desperately wanted it? Honestly, this is a really tough decision that I'm glad you made. For several reasons, it would have been an awful idea to sell this to your brother. He is not financially stable, and he would not have been able to pay for all the repairs that would have been necessary just to make that place safe to live in. I think by selling this house off, you probably protected your brother from a lot of problems in his life, because he's living paycheck to paycheck. And sure, the house is like a dream, but that dream could have turned into a nightmare if the electrical system, I don't know, caught on fire one day, or maybe the roof would have caved in because it hasn't been up to code, or something like that. There are a lot of things that could have gone wrong in that house had your brother finally gotten a chance to live in it. And it sounds like this is a really old house, and you better believe if any of those things happened to the house, he would be knocking on your door to try and figure it out financially. And that, in my opinion, just sounds obnoxious, and it's not something I would ever want to put up with. So yes, it really was a hard decision, but honestly, in my opinion, I really think this was for the best. Am I the jerk for making my neighbor's kids cry after humiliating them in front of the entire neighborhood? Here's what happened. So I'm an 18-year-old female, and I live with my two older siblings. Recently, new people moved in right next to us, and they have kids. They are a bit loud, which was a bit annoying, but they were kids, and kids do that. I didn't really have a problem with them until they started ding-dong ditching us. I don't even know if it could be considered ding-dong ditching, because they literally kick the door like they're trying to impersonate the FBI. They hang out in front of our house and do it every 10 to 20 minutes. Keep in mind, they kick really hard. My sister was going to call the police in a fit of rage, but I told her no, because talking to their parents or calling the police might just make it worse. I don't know the kid's situation at home, and confronting the parents might make it bad for them, but they keep doing it, more often and a lot harder. There are literally dents and scuffs on the door, and I'm seriously getting annoyed along with my siblings. They clearly don't see the security camera right in front of the door, so I know their intelligence is lacking, so I'm not gonna yell at them. Instead, I wrote a sign in front of the door, kindly asking them to stop, because my siblings work from home, and it is extremely distracting, but it keeps happening. They rip up the sign and then they spit on it, so I just can't take it anymore. I slip on some socks and slippers and I go next door to talk to the parents. The mom said it's not that big of a deal. My door wasn't seriously damaged, and that they were just kids and trying to have fun. And if it's that distracting, I should just put on some headphones. But my last straw is when these kids mess with my packages outside the door. They would shake them and throw the box against the stairs. So I snapped and decided to take screenshots of all the security footage of them being a menace. I make a poster with their face on it, the damage that they've done to them, and photo evidence of them being menaces. I type out, "Neighbors, be on the lookout. Local doorstop gremlins may terrorize your front door," which I found funny at the time. I print it out and tape it all over the neighborhood. My other neighbor finds it hilarious because those kids have been doing the same to her, and she confronted the parents too, and the parents did nothing. But today, I got a giant knock on the door, and it wasn't the little snot-nosed kids. This time, it was the mom. She called me all kinds of names for humiliating her kids. She said that her kids were crying and they were traumatized to go outside. She yells at me and drops pieces of the ripped up poster on my doormat and then walks away. So am I the jerk for humiliating those kids for all that they've done to our door? First and foremost, the mother in this story is an awful mother. Is she seriously justifying her stupid kid's behavior? Like, she's seriously gonna look in these people's eyes and say, "Oh, if you don't like the noise of my kids kicking your door in, just put headphones on." Like, I'm sorry, that's not gonna fly. Your kids are busting in my door. The original poster even goes on to say that they're really surprised that a 10-year-old could even do that. I mean, there are literal dents and scuffs on the door. There's no way that anyone can really justify that and still keep a straight face. And personally, if I was in your shoes, I absolutely absolutely would have called the police. That is damaging someone else's property. That is also blatant harassment towards you and your family, and there's no way you should have to put up with that. But overall, I really do like your solution. You humiliated those little punks right then and there, and you basically taught them a lesson that if they want to try and mess around, then they are definitely going to find out. My entitled manager is up for the same job as me, but he is an absolute menace to the office and has done many things that would absolutely get anyone else fired. So I decide to get some revenge, and as a result, I get him fired as well as blacklisted from my field of work. Here's what happened. So for a bit of backstory, I'm a 25-year-old male and I work in the IT department for my company. Our IT department branches out into 6 smaller departments, and each of these has their own boss, and the bosses of all these departments answer directly to the director of the IT department. A couple of weeks ago, I was called into the director's office when I came into work. She is an incredible person and mentor who I honestly really look up to. She told me that she had some good news and bad news. The bad news was that she was offered another job at a much larger company as the IT director at one of their branches in Chicago, so she would be leaving in a couple of months. But the good news was that the position of IT director at our company was open, and given my performance and reputation around the office, my immediate boss, who is the head of computer system analysis, had put my name in for consideration for the job. Each of the 6 department bosses in IT had to put one name in for consideration, so I have at least 5 other people who are competing for this job, plus any potential outside hires. After our little chat, I weighed the pros and cons of the job if I get it, and I decided to just go for it. I might have a pretty good shot at getting the job, since I would consider myself a fairly likable person, as well as being a hard worker and fairly good at my job. But there are others who are also very good candidates, and I'd still be okay if I didn't get the job. It's an honor just to be considered. Now, let me tell you about the target of my revenge. For the sake of the story, we'll call this guy Gabe. Gabe is not his real name. As the head of technical support, Gabe had the power to recommend anyone in his department for the position. But instead of picking anyone else, he picked himself. Now, I already knew him and what he was like, because a year ago, I also worked in tech support for a short time. I was originally hired to be in the computer system analysis department, but I volunteered to help out in tech support, since we were a bit short-staffed at the time. Gabe is an obnoxious, self-absorbed, arrogant, and uptight jerk who doesn't listen to anyone who he feels is beneath him. He's either in his late 30s or early 40s, but either way, he has at least 10 years on me. He's a little on the chubby side, he's got a receding hairline and a neck beard. All he needs to achieve his final form is a fedora. Back when I worked for him, he gave me a lot of garbage for so many little things. From not filling out repair tickets right, to completing a repair slightly out of order, he always had something to complain about. But other than that, he seemed fine to me. To be honest, I probably wouldn't have done what I did or gone as far as I did if he didn't do something that absolutely blew my mind. Here's what he did. I was just doing my work and minding my own business as one does, and when I stood up to go refill my water bottle at the water fountain, guess who follows me? If you said Gabe, well, congratulations, you're right. Gabe walks up to me while I'm filling up my bottle and starts a conversation. He walks up and asks me how I'm doing. Immediately though, I knew something was wrong. He's never this friendly, but I had no easy way out of this, so I just rolled with it. I said to him, "Oh, hey Gabe, I'm good. How are you doing?" He interrupts me and says, "So I heard that your name was put in for the director's job." I said to him, "Yeah, I'm really excited to interview. It's an honor even to be considered." At this point, Gabe just laughs and puts on his normal expression of smug and gassy. Gabe says, "Listen to me. If you think they're gonna pick you, a lazy new kid who can't even write a repair ticket correctly, over me, a team manager who's had 15 years with this company, then you're out of your mind." When he said this, I was shocked. I could not believe that those were actual words that a coworker, much less a coworker with a higher position, actually said to my face. I said to him, "Wait, what's your problem? Why would you say that? I did nothing but good work for you last year and you know it." Gabe looked at me and said, "It was mediocre at best. When I become the IT director, I'm gonna crack the whip. Why anyone would think that you are a worthy candidate for one of the highest positions in the company is beyond me. So I'll make sure my new department heads have much better judgment." He then walked away smugly and I just stood there, both shocked and honestly quite hurt. The only part he got right was that I was relatively new, being there only for about 2 years. But I also realized in that moment that I couldn't let this kind of person be the director. But again, I'm just a kid to them. So what what could I do? So that's when I started to plan my revenge. That same day, I went down to the building's cafeteria to take my lunch break with my girlfriend. She works in the marketing department. I told her about the promotion and what happened with Gabe. She made me feel better by talking me down and was super nice about all of it. But what happened next was even better. A few of my friends from IT walked by and they congratulated me as well as sat down. A couple of them are from tech support and the rest are from other departments. My girlfriend was so welcoming of them and this basically became a small party. We talked and then I told them about what happened with Gabe. The ones in tech support all groaned, and surprisingly, so did the rest of them. I was intrigued and I asked them to elaborate, and all of them have their own story involving Gabe. It turns out that his usual condescending remarks aren't the worst of it. They had stories about him ripping into an intern for not getting his coffee order right. One story about him making some awful remarks about an HR representative, and one of them had a couple of recordings of awful, really creepy comments that he made towards the female department heads in IT, and he's even come to work intoxicated on multiple occasions. Although that last part really wasn't news to me, since he reeked of alcohol frequently. Now, at this point, you're probably asking the same question my girlfriend asked. Why don't you tell somebody? Well, here's why. Our communication policy is kind of awful in IT. Rather than report a dispute or an issue immediately to HR or the director, we have to give it to our immediate supervisor, which in this case would be Gabe for a lot of them. And do you really think Gabe's gonna rat himself out to the director? As much as I love my boss and think that she's doing a wonderful job, that's the one policy that she has that I don't agree with. At this point, we all kind of bonded over our mutual hatred for Gabe. We had all agreed that Gabe would be an absolutely terrible boss, and we needed to stop him. We were the Avengers, and this was our endgame. And then my genius girlfriend said something that I couldn't believe I didn't figure out sooner. She said, you know, this time next week, you're gonna be face to face with the CEO, an HR rep, and your director for the interview. That's your opening. You can air out all of his dirty laundry right there. The rest of our faces lit up. We collectively realized this opportunity, and we were all ecstatic. This was our chance, and we weren't gonna waste it. Gabe is a terrible human being, and would be an even worse director. He simply had to go. But first, I would need some proof. So that's exactly what I got. Along with rewriting my resume and brushing up on my interview skills, I spent the next week being something of an investigative journalist. I asked my previously mentioned coworker to email me those recordings that he had of Gabe's really awful comments, which by the way were absolutely sickening to hear. We also spent time interviewing members of the tech support team, as well as some of the other department heads. Almost everyone had some form of bad experience with him, ranging from unprofessional to downright abusive behavior. The head of web development even said that she has always felt uncomfortable whenever they are alone in a room together. By the time I was done, I had 3 voice recordings of Gabe, 4 pages of quotes from people around the office, and stories I had originally heard at lunch that day when we began planning. I really wanted to prove his whole day drinking thing, but I was afraid that going that far might cost me my job. But what I wanted to do was sneak into his office, open his drawers, and hopefully find empty liquor bottles or something to that effect. But what I had would just have to suffice. Then the day finally came. We were definitely in the endgame now. I showed up to work the day of the interviews in my finest suit. I had my resume and literally pages of evidence to make my case. I walked into the office and saw my competition, along with a bunch of other people who I didn't recognize. Those must have been the outside hires. I was getting pretty nervous, especially when I saw the interview committee in the conference room through the glass walls. The CEO, my director, and an HR rep. I took a few deep breaths, checked when my turn was coming up, and then I sat down to do my work, just waiting to make my move. A few of my coworkers came by my desk to wish me good luck, and that made me feel a lot better about it. I waited and waited for my turn, and then saw Gabe walking up to me from the conference room, so that means his interview must have just finished. I pulled out my phone and went to voice memos and began recording, just in case I got anything more out of him, and oh boy, you better believe I did. I say to him, "What's up, Gabe? How was your interview?" Gabe looks at me and says, "Great, obviously. The job is as good as mine. You might as well not even try." I say to him, "I'm still gonna try my best. Who knows, I might even get it." Gabe said to me, "Yeah, keep dreaming." He starts to get up in my face at this point, and I can smell his lunch on his breath. Way too many onions. He then starts hissing at me. Gabe says, "You're absolute trash, kid. They're not gonna pick a kid with 2 years of experience with an undergrad degree over me." me. I've been at this company for far too long, and I got my undergrad and my master's from Princeton. Don't think for a second that you have the upper hand. You're nothing to me. I held my breath while he ranted, and then he walked away to go talk to another one of my coworkers who had already had their interview. My coworkers around me just looked at me both shocked and confused once he walked away. I grabbed my phone, stopped the recording, and then I played it back. That was it. That was the final piece I needed. I waited for a couple more interviews to finish until they finally came in. I grabbed my bag and my phone and walked right into the conference room. As I walked, I could feel the eyes of some of the coworkers on me. They knew my plan, and I think they were counting on me to pull this one off. Once inside, we all shook hands and exchanged formalities before sitting down and letting the interview begin. Not all of it is relative to the story, so let me just skip to the end. The CEO says, well, given the amount of internships you've done and how much time you've been at the company, you may just have a good chance. However, we just interview people with almost triple your experience. How do you stand out from the rest? I then said to him, well, if I became the new director, I already have some ideas for policies I'd like to put in place. The director perks up and says, oh, really? Would you care to give us an example? I said to them, well, don't get me wrong. I believe that you have done an amazing job as director of this department, but there are some things I think we can improve upon. For instance, our policy when it comes to HR. The HR rep chimes in and says, well, could you elaborate on that, please? I said to them, certainly. In the IT department, when we have any disputes or grievances to settle, we need to report them to our direct supervisor, not the director, but the lowest department heads. My goal is to streamline communication so workers can report issues directly to the director or go straight to HR. The director then said, all right, but can you tell us why the current policy is an issue? At this point, I started smiling. This is it. This was my opening. I say to them, well, funny that you should ask. Recently, I had heard stories from a bunch of my coworkers about our head of tech support by the name of Gabe. He's been very rude to his staff and to others on multiple occasions. In fact, I think unprofessional is a bit of an understatement from the stories that I've been hearing. Right then, I reached into my bag and pulled out the long list of stories and quotes that I had gathered from the past week and handed them to the CEO. I said to them, I care about my coworkers, so I did some digging. I really feel like this is something that you need to see. I watched as the search committee read the quotes and stories. I watched as their expressions turned to shock and disgust, which I totally get. I felt the same way when I heard of all of this. The HR rep said, this is a conflict of interest. From what I know, Gabe is also your competition for this position. How do we know that these stories aren't fabricated so that you can get some kind of advantage? Because offenses like these could result in immediate termination. I hope you have a way to prove these very serious accusations. So I responded by saying, I had a feeling that you might say that. You are free to interview any of the people I quoted, but I can just save you some time and show you this. I pulled out my phone and opened up the emails that my coworker had sent me, and all four of us listened to this neckbeard's disgusting and unsettling quotes. But I wasn't done there. I also pulled up the most recent one, the conversation between me and him. My director just looked down at her desk, and then they looked at each other. I was the one to break the silence. I said to them, I'm sorry you had to hear all of this. The CEO then said, could you please email those recordings to me? I would like to address this immediately. I responded by saying, absolutely, of course. You are free to keep those papers as well. I forwarded the email to him along with my recordings. The director thanked me for this information, and they said they'll let me know about their decision when the time comes. I thanked them for their time, I shook everyone's hand again, and that's when the HR rep spoke up. They said, could you please ask Gabe to come back in? I would like to address this immediately as well. And at this point, I was so happy. I said to them, I would be happy to. I leave the room and notice my friends in tech support just staring at me. My girlfriend was also sitting at my desk, since we planned on going out for lunch after my interview. I didn't want to give anything away, so I kept a straight face and walked past them towards Gabe's office. I walked in and sighed. The interview committee wants to see you again. Gabe just looked up from his computer and gave me a cocky smile, as if to say, I told you so. He got up and pushed past me towards the door. I followed behind him towards the conference room, and we parted ways when he went in and I walked towards my desk. I wanted to see exactly what happened. I watched what unfolded through the glass walls, and I saw Gabe's face turn white and his expression turned from smug to terrified. He turned his head to me, and I had this delightful grin on my face. I just waved and then left the office with my girlfriend to have a nice lunch. When it comes to the aftermath, I honestly was feeling pretty good about the whole day. I got my revenge. I did fairly well in the job interview, and I had an amazing chicken parmesan for lunch that day. I felt so good that I decided to take the rest of the day off. I went to the zoo, saw a really cute koala bear, and the next day I came to work dressed down since the interviews were over, and then patiently waited for the committee to make their decision. When I walked into the lobby of the building, my two friends from tech support ran over and trapped me in a bear hug. I said to them, "Well, this is new. What's this for?" One of the friends said, "You did it." And I said to them, "Wait, I got the job?" But my friend said, "No, we wouldn't know if you did or didn't. We're talking about Gabe." I then asked if I stopped him from getting the job, but my other friend said, "Oh, you did a lot more than that, but you'll have to just see it for yourself." Both of them dragged me towards the elevator to go up to the IT floor. When we got there, they dragged me through the main office and towards Gabe's office. When we got in, all I found was an empty room with a desk in the middle of it. My jaw dropped. Apparently, I collected so much evidence for Gabe's misbehavior. Not only did I eliminate him for getting the position of the director's job, but he was also fired from the company and potentially blacklisted, since everything I submitted for evidence against him was put on his permanent file. Now, I'm not sure if he was blacklisted or not, since I'm not entirely sure how that works, but he's definitely gone for good. I asked them about the details of what happened after I left. They told me that Gabe was so mad, probably at me, that his face was bright red. After he left the conference room, he spent the rest of the day packing up and drinking in his office. So I guess my day drinking theory held up. He left in shame and we won't see him ever again. And honestly, I'm so excited. Gabe was gone and it felt like the office was a brighter place. People were so excited that a few people outside the tech support department brought in a bunch of desserts, from cheesecake to brownies. They were delicious, but I think what made them taste much better was that I did something to cause this rush of joy. I think the best part of this whole thing is that only a couple of people knew that I had something to do with this. The rest of them were totally clueless. I'm not the protector that IT wants, but I am the protector that IT needs. In hindsight, I don't know what would have been more satisfying, doing what I did or getting the job fair and square and firing Gabe. But if there's one thing I've learned in life, you will do things that you are proud of that you enjoy, and you will do things that you're not so proud of, but will really enjoy. And you know what? I am both very proud of this, and I really enjoyed this. This might come back later to bite me in the butt, but for right now, I think I'll just enjoy it. But now the director has to pick a new head of tech support. Either that, or she'll give that job up to the next director. It's been almost a few days since the interviews, and we're still waiting for the results. Even if I don't get the job, I still gain something from this. I have a better bond with my coworkers, and I got rid of this jerk in my office. So what's the moral of the story? Don't shoot an unfamiliar gun, because you don't know how strong the kickback's gonna be. The original poster really did everything they could to take down this guy. I mean, seriously, this Gabe guy was just a menace. He was treating everybody like garbage, and he was doing all this horrible stuff at the expense of his coworkers. Like, there's really no good excuse for treating your coworkers like that. So honestly, good for the original poster for getting that well-deserved revenge. Because based on what you've described, Gabe absolutely had that coming, and his actions absolutely deserve to have the consequences. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. My friends are going away on their honeymoon for a month and have left me and my friends to take care of their place and their dog while they're away. But their place is disgusting, and I honestly am so grossed out, I now seriously don't know what to do. My dear friend and her husband are on their honeymoon for a month and asked some of their friends to pet sit for free while they were away, and we agreed so that they could enjoy their trip. But the expectations and the conditions of their apartment are ridiculous, especially for a favor. I have to stay at their place because my landlord doesn't allow dogs. When I arrived, their apartment was absolutely filthy. This is one of my best friends, so I know she can be a little messy, but she and her husband always clean before guests. I didn't expect the apartment to be this gross when people were coming to help them out. There was literally food rotting in the fridge, piles of stuff everywhere, clumps of hair all over the bathroom, trash in the trash cans. They didn't strip the bed before they left. Instead, they left piles of mismatched sheets on their dirty floor, one for each friend who's staying over. When I grabbed my pile, it didn't smell clean, and there's no washer or dryer here, so I ended up buying new sheets. Also, I found a roach. I cleaned the fridge and took out the trash, but this apartment needs a deep clean, and that's way beyond what I'm willing to do for my friends. I'm the first person to stay, and I feel like I need to warn everyone else about the conditions. The pet sitting document my friend sent was 2 pages long. One of my tasks was picking the dog and all of his stuff, including his giant crate, up from a kennel an hour away in the middle of my workday. I had no idea I'd have to do that when I agreed to help them out. On top of that, they keep texting me with additional requests. I have no problem helping my friends while they enjoy their trip. I've pet sat for other friends and it's been fine, but these two are treating me like hired help, but only worse. I can't imagine them leaving their house this way if strangers were coming to stay. I briefly mentioned some of the issues to them, but don't feel like getting into it over text messaging or disrupting their honeymoon. Obviously, I'll be talking to them about the situation when they get back, because boy oh boy are they taking advantage of their friends. I get it, they're tired and overwhelmed from planning a wedding and honeymoon, but properly handling pet care should have been at the top of their list while planning. Weddings don't mean that you need to be disrespectful to the people and pets that you love. So honestly, I'm just really grossed out and I seriously don't know what to do. If I was in your shoes, there's no way I would put up with that. That would literally be the first and last time I help them out. Like, I'm all about helping friends out and being there for them and all of that good stuff. But if that means I have to deal with literally roaches and all this dirty stuff all over the place, then that, in my opinion, is unacceptable. And these people should have cleaned up after themselves if they expect me to have any kind of stay in their home. So honestly, that's what I would do if I was in your shoes, because there is no way I would want to stay in that environment, especially if they're going to be that negligent towards everybody else helping them out. My entitled parents have made awful financial decisions their entire lives, and they are now demanding that I make a payment to them every single month just to help pay off the debt that they've placed upon themselves. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So for a bit of backstory, I'm one of 5 kids, and growing up we always had food on the table, and my parents would take us on trips, we would go camping, go to theme parks, road trips, lots of stuff. I came to find out later in life that most of it, if not all of it, was paid with credit cards. My father's daily driver is a 2006 bright yellow Corvette, which he got brand new. My mom, who just retired from teaching this year, drives a Mercedes-Benz SUV. When I was 19 years old and went to Chase Bank to get my first credit card and start building my own credit, the background check found a Capital One credit card with an outstanding debt of over $25,000. This had been mistakenly tied to me because I share my father's name. I went to college without a scholarship, but was accepted into an aviation program, of which my parents offered to pay for. I did not fully realize at the time that this was all being paid for with a loan. Long story short, that loan exceeded $50,000, and I did not succeed in acquiring my certification to fly commercially. During the time that I was in college, my parents moved out of the house that they owned so that they could purchase land on a golf course, and this was a property costing over $250,000. While attempting to save money so they could build their house on the golf course, they rented property on this golf course. Between paying this rent, in addition to the monthly dues required by the Homeowners Association and Country Club, they have spent in excess of $2,500 every month since 2013. That is literally $300,000. All of this after buying the most expensive cars they could, going on cruises around the Caribbean, buying extravagant clothing, and eating at fine dining restaurants. Now, to fast forward, I got my degree in education. I worked as a teacher for 5 years before leaving the profession due to safety concerns. Now, my wife works as a travel nurse, and we do quite well taking care of ourselves, with me staying home to look after our 2 babies. We have a 2-year-old boy and a 1-year-old girl. My mother and father are pressuring me immensely to make payments to them so I can make whole their financial investment in me. This is an extra $400 a month that I simply cannot afford. I honestly feel like I'm being extorted by my mother and father, with their relationship being collateral. They feel deserving of being in my life as well as my children's lives. But let me be clear, the needs of food, water, and shelter aside, my childhood was not a happy one. I was really treated awful, and I'll just leave it at that. I know that if I refuse to pay them, I will be excommunicated from this family. I will be made the black sheep of the family. I will be spoken of only poorly, and furthermore made to feel guilty for taking their grandchildren away from them. This whole situation has me disgusted. It's like the sum total of their lives completely revolves around money. It is literally always about money with them. Part of me wants to keep them out of my children's lives, and part of me wants to say forget them and let them continue to deal with their own terrible choices. And another part of me wants to be a part of this family, while simultaneously wanting to completely ghost people in my life who would turn our relationship into slave labor. The idea of getting a remote night job solely so I could pay them back feels like I'm being reduced to slave labor. My parents could have done anything, and numerous investments could have been made, made. But instead, my 70-year-old father, who makes 6 figures working for NASA, will likely have to continue working as long as he possibly can. On one hand, I do feel bad for him and want to fulfill this financial obligation that has been thrust upon me. But on the other hand, I am simply too burnt out and would rather have nothing to do with them. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, this is such a tricky situation because I really can't see where the original poster's coming from. On one side of this is literally your family. These are your parents. You obviously care about them and you want to help them in any way that you can. I think innately anybody would want their parents to be involved in their children's lives, but that doesn't ignore the fact that your parents were awful to you growing up. They literally willingly brought on so much debt into their lives that now you're the one being forced to pick up the bill. And in my opinion, that is seriously not okay. They place these financial burdens upon their own backs, not the other way around. They have been reckless with their money pretty much from the get-go, and now that they're in a spot where they're old and they have no energy left in their life, they now want to take money from you as a result of their bad choices. And honestly, that's not fair for you in the slightest. I know if I was in that situation, I would just start learning how to say no. I would tell them, no, I cannot help you. No, I cannot afford that. And if they really want to try and be like, okay, fine, you're out of the family, then that is unfortunately their decision and not yours. Because at the end of the day, you are more than a financial investment. You are literally their child. And right about now, they're only treating you as some kind of ATM to try and solve their financial problems. And if I was in your shoes, I would not take that for another second. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. Am I the jerk for telling my poor friend that he's actually the privileged one now after he now makes about $300,000 a year at his job? Here's what happened. So one of my very close friends and I met during our first post-college job at a prestigious finance firm, and we immediately bonded over the long work hours, the awful middle management, and the general soul-sucking nature of making PowerPoint slides and Excel spreadsheets all day. We'll call this friend John. That is not his real name. For the next few years, a lot of our friendship revolved around us talking about work and how much we absolutely hated it. A few years ago, I decided that I just couldn't take the corporate grind anymore, and I quit my job to move into the nonprofit world. While I now certainly make less than I would have at my old job, I'm exponentially happier, I'm a lot healthier, and I absolutely love the work that I do. I also still make a very good salary, about $80,000 a year, which I feel is more than enough money for me and my needs. John has been ambitiously climbing the corporate ladder and recently became vice president at his firm. He makes well over $300,000 a year. John grew up in a very poor family, and his relatives are still financially unstable and often ask him for money. I, on the other hand, grew up in a comfortable upper middle class suburb with parents who have always been financially stable. They're not millionaires, but if anything ever happened to me, they could and would help me out until I could get back on my feet. John does not have that privilege. I recently got offered my dream job, where I would be making slightly less money than I am now, and despite the money, I am genuinely giddy about this job prospect and was pumped to tell my friends. However, when I told John, his response was to say, "I'm glad you have the financial privilege to take a pay cut." And that was really surprising. I was hoping that he would congratulate me or at least be excited about me wanting this job or anything along those lines. I will admit that I snapped back at him and told him that he makes triple the amount of money I do, and that at some point he needs to realize that he's got privileges of his own instead of pointing out mine. The conversation got a bit heated, and we agreed to hang up and cool off before talking it over. Now, I'm wondering if I should apologize to John for what I said, or if I should just stand my ground. I'm feeling angry and a bit defensive, which I realize is the exact reaction that a spoiled rich kid would have. However, I do also think that it was a bit mean of him to say what he did at the exact moment I was so excited. And while generational wealth does give privilege that income alone does not, he literally does make over triple the amount of money that I have now. So it seems a tiny bit hypocritical for him to be calling me privileged. What should I do? In my opinion, I think both people in this story can do a lot better. For starters, I think the original poster maybe should not have said what they said. Like, clearly your friend hit a nerve, and this nerve is something that you did not want him to touch. But he did say what he did. He did basically call you privileged to take a pay cut, and that was incredibly inappropriate. But for you to shout back at him and be like, "No, you're the one with privilege," that in my opinion was also not the right move. And if anything, I think both of you should just get back on the phone, or at least meet in person and apologize to one another. You're clearly good friends. You both have been through thick and thin, and and you both have a really good connection that would really be a shame to let go of. And also, there's no comparing between the two of you. I think there's a lot that you really can say about each other's careers, but I think it's very inappropriate to make assumptions about the true character of what's actually happening. So hopefully your friendship can work out with John, because obviously what was said was either out of jealousy or just in the heat of the moment. And I think by talking it out and trying to at least have some kind of common ground, you can hopefully become good friends again and get over this small bump in the road. My friend constantly picks up the tab for his expensive golf club, costing him hundreds of dollars just so I can play golf with him. And at this point, it kind of seems like I'm being really entitled and I seriously don't know what to do. So to start things out, I am financially okay. One of my closest friends is rich in the sense that they have a $13,000 tennis court in their backyard. We went to college together and have been incredibly close friends for about 20 years. His kids call me their uncle, and I was in his wedding party. I also spoke at their wedding, and honestly, I can go on with the things we've done together. It's important to note that we were broke together, even though we went to a private university and our mom and dads pay for the tuition, despite the fact that the money was on us. So here's where the issue comes in. He took up golf. I've played for years and will play at the local courses and spend up on bucket list trips. Places like Pebble Beach or Streamsong or even in Ireland. He joined a nice country club as well. Whenever I text him to play golf, he always says, meet at my club. After 5 or 6 times, I told him that between guest fees, which are about $200, as well as a $120 caddy, it is a little pricey. And I wanted him to let me find a place that we could play that doesn't hit me so hard. We try to play about 2 times a week, so you can see how this would absolutely add up. For reference, I would end up at a course that's usually about $70. His issue is he can't always make a tee time. The club he goes to is first come first serve, which works given his profession. He just can't always make it to the tee times, so it's basically his club or bust. He also laughed at me and said, don't be weird. I always offer to pay, but he always just picks up the tab every time and never complains about it. I gave up on offering to pay because it felt like Groundhog Day. He asked me for little favors, I think just to make me feel good, saying stuff like, hey, on the way to the house, can you pick up some takeout or grab the kids from practice, etc. Now though, whenever I text him to play golf, it's become a given. His club, his treat. I found out from his wife he was going club shopping, so I got him a gift card for a putter. And this was for a Scotty Cameron, which is about $500. So it really did cost me a real number by my standards. But the math isn't even close to being fair. I feel like I'm inviting myself to his club, his treat, when all I want is to kick it with my buddy. I would even play $12 mini golf with him. Is this sense of entitlement in my head? How do I make sure he never ever gets that impression? What should I do? Honestly, I think if it bothered him, he probably would have said something. Like clearly he doesn't mind paying for your side of things when it comes to attending his club. He clearly has the money for it and he never feels like this is ever a deal breaker. So I don't think you're taking advantage of him. I think you're just being a friend and he's just wanting you to be around with him at his club. Like obviously you're still friends and obviously you still get to hang out, but I don't think you're acting entitled at all. It just so happens to be the fact that this really does cost a lot of money. So if anything, you probably feel really guilty for him paying for you all the time. I know if I was in that situation, I would probably feel really guilty and also a little embarrassed that I can't outright pay for it myself. So honestly, it doesn't sound like this is a big deal. I would just enjoy my trips with my friend to the golf club if I was in your shoes. Because honestly, it kind of seems like you're overthinking it. Am I the jerk for asking my friend if she's pregnant? Here's what happened. So my friend, who's a 23-year-old female, usually goes to the gym regularly and parties a lot. Lately though, I've noticed that she stopped drinking entirely and doesn't smoke at all either, and has stopped heavy lifting and isn't going to the gym as regular as she used to. On top of that, lately she'll often excuse herself to go to the toilet, presumably to throw up, and I've noticed that she's gotten a bit thicker. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not jabbing her looks. This is just something that I've noticed. When we were out the other week and I noticed she didn't even touch her Red Bull, I pulled her to the side to have a private conversation and I asked her if she was pregnant. She immediately flipped out and denied it. Right after that, she went home and I covered for her when the group asked why she went home. I texted her later that same night if I had overstepped and she simply replied by saying, "You literally called me fat. You're such a jerk." Now, I never did such a thing, but I simply let her be instead of arguing. Today, another friend told me she indeed is pregnant and I don't know what to make of her reaction towards me when I asked her in our one-on-one conversation. What should I do? Okay, let me spell this out for anybody who wants to talk to someone who presumably has gained a lot of weight or they're acting just a little bit different. Don't ever, under any circumstance, assume that a woman is pregnant. Period. End of story. story. Just don't do it. It is literally not worth your time and trouble to try and make that assumption, only to then get it wrong. And also, just because she's gotten a little bit thicker and isn't doing the normal stuff that she used to do, isn't some kind of excuse for you to be like, wait a second, are you pregnant? Like, seriously, that is incredibly cringy, and you just don't ask a woman that. It is highly inappropriate, and also, you're not her boyfriend. Like, why are you pulling her to the side to ask her that question? That comes off as a little bit creepy, and you really should have minded your own business. So in my opinion, yeah, you're the jerk. Despite the fact that she is pregnant, this is something you simply should never ask a woman, because the risk of offending someone is way too high, and it's just not worth the trouble to try and justify why you asked them. My entitled mother refuses to help me fix a broken cabinet, and instead decides to sit in the middle of the floor, barking orders at me, trying to get me to fix it without ever lifting a single finger. And I'm honestly so annoyed, and I seriously can't wait for my dad to divorce my mom. Here's what happened. To start things out, my mom is very entitled and always has been. I have quite a few stories about it, but this happened a couple hours ago and I'm still fuming. For some context, I'm still a teenager and I live with my brother, my mom, and dad. At the time that this happened, my dad was at work and my brother was still sleeping. We live in a 2-story house and the upstairs is like its own living area. So this morning I woke up, took care of my dog, and went upstairs to get some breakfast. I opened the cabinet and walk away because I forgot to turn the TV on. I started to walk back towards the cabinet and I hear a loud noise. I look over and one of the shelves had fallen over. I clear everything off of it because there were some breakable things. I found the pegs that held the shelf up and put them back in the slots. I stabilized the shelf enough to go downstairs to see if my mom was awake, which she was. Here's the conversation that followed. I said to her, "Hey mom, can you come upstairs? I need help. One of the cabinet shelves fell and it's heavy." My mom said, "Is it an emergency?" I said to her, "Well, no, but I'd rather it not fall any more than it has." My mom then says, "Well, if it's not an emergency, it can wait until I've had my coffee." I walk back upstairs and try to fix it as best I can, and she comes stomping up the stairs and starts yelling at me for not waiting for her and breaking it even more. I started to move the objects I put on the floor, on the table, and other counters. She sits on the floor in front of the cabinet and starts going through everything else in the cabinet that she can reach, all while the shelf continues to fall. She then says to me, "Well, aren't you going to help me fix the cabinet?" So I walk around her and grab the shelf, and she continues to just sit there. She then tells me I'm not positioning the shelf right and that I'm doing it wrong. I move out of the way so she can do it the way she wants to do it, and she just continues to sit there doing nothing. I grab the shelf and I try again, but I dropped it. She then yells at me saying, "Can't you do anything right?" I apologize, grabbed the shelf again, and got it back in the cabinet properly. She then tells me the shelf above it was slanted and that I needed to fix that one as well, while she is still sitting on the floor. So I do the same process again, and I start sorting things out to put the heavy things on the bottom of the cabinet, all while she still is sitting on the floor. I eventually finished everything. I walked away, only for her to call me back over, demanding I help her up since her legs are numb. I help her up and I just walk off. And honestly, the plan at this point is for my dad to divorce her once I finish high school, and then we are going to be moving away as far as possible. I've been saving up as much money as I can, and my dad and I have created accounts without my mom's name on any of them. So once that divorce inevitably happens, I am 100% moving in with my dad. Honestly, good for you for knowing what's gonna go down. It's also really cool to see that your dad has your back. Your mom sounds awful. How obnoxious is that? Here you are trying to fix a cabinet that's literally falling apart, and your mom's just sitting there in front of you barking orders at you. Like, that is seriously so obnoxious, and I can see why your dad is divorcing her. So hopefully that day comes sooner than later, because from the sounds of it, this really seems like this is a much bigger deal than you're letting on. And hopefully this works out for both you as well as your dad. Am I the jerk for wanting to cancel a party that I didn't sign up for after my husband told me that I would be cooking for all the guests? Here's what happened. So my husband and I have been dating for 3 years and married for 2. Recently, we have bought a house together to start a family. It has a beautiful garden and is overall quite spacious. My husband, let's call him Paul, and his best friend Ethan have known each other since elementary school, and they are very close. Ethan hasn't had any relationship during the entire time that I've known him. Apparently, this is quite rough on him. So my husband decided that he would host a party for him at our house and asked me to invite all my single girlfriends, and then they were to invite their friends as well. To be honest, I really did not want to have a party in our home, especially with me being 7 months pregnant, but I gave in and said fine because I thought it would be fun to meet my friends friends and just get my mind off things. We chose a date for the party and invited our friends. An estimated amount of around 30 people, mostly women, would be attending. Even though I'm pregnant and I cannot drink, I offered my husband that I could be making cocktails for the guests, as this is something that I think is fun, and I like making fake ones for myself as well. He kind of looked at me weird and said, "Well, who else would be making them?" Which really threw me off for a bit, as this was his event and not mine. I then took the moment to ask him if he had called a caterer or how he was going to be feeding all these guests, to which he gave me a look and replied by saying, "I thought you were going to cook." Now at this point, I was sure I wasn't hearing clearly, so I asked him again and I got the same answer as before. I told him that there was absolutely no way I was going to feed 30 people and that he should either order food or make it himself. He told me that he was too busy with party planning and work and had no time, and that I should just be making appetizers instead, as people would mostly just be drinking. I told him that I would not be doing that, as my pregnancy has been hard on me and I didn't think I had it in me. He told me to just try, and I said no. I told him that he should call catering before it's too late. Fast forward 2 weeks, and guess what? He has not called catering and told me that I had to make the appetizers, as it was too late now anyways. It made me incredibly upset, and I told him that I was going to be canceling the party because at this point it was stressing me out too much. He then called me selfish and told me to quit being such a jerk and to just do something nice for his friend who he says is struggling. I do feel bad for lashing out on my husband, and I wonder if I over-exaggerated. So I need to know, am I the jerk for wanting to cancel the party that my husband is throwing for his best friend, all because he's trying to make me make all this food for all these people? What should I do? Your husband is absolutely the jerk in this situation, not you. You are 7 months pregnant and he's trying to make you cook for all these people? Like, why would he not just get catering and make it easier for everybody? This seriously could have been so simple. Like, instead of trying to make your wife cook for all these people, who, by the way, did not volunteer to do this guy should have just called catering and had somebody else take care of the food aspect of this party. Like, it really would not have been that big of a deal, and it would have been so much easier than trying to force your pregnant wife to take care of all of it. So no, you're not the jerk in the slightest. I feel like if I was in that situation as well, and I'm 7 months pregnant, and I'm already stressed out of my mind about the pregnancy, I would want to back out of this party as well, because your husband is being unreasonable, and his decision to do this without asking you first is incredibly selfish. An entitled Karen tries to get me fired, not only making a formal complaint herself, but also forging a fake complaint from a patient, claiming that I was dressing too provocatively to be around any of the patients in the hospital. So I decided to get some revenge, and eventually forcing her to put her 2 weeks notice in. And I've never felt better about getting revenge on anybody in my life. Here's what happened. So I work at a hospital that doubles as a research institution. Since I'm on the research side, I have to involve lots of other departments, and most people with whom I work with are very chill and understand that I have to beseech them for things to do my job. I'm one of those people who's very on top of things, for which my coworkers really value. However, the one place where the camaraderie breaks down is with some of the nurses who work in my specific clinic. Honestly, I've done a good job making most of the nurses like me. I bring them homemade treats sometimes, and I'm always extra friendly and approbative with them. Some of them have their days regardless, and I just put up with them. Right after I first started working in that specific clinic, unfortunately, one nurse in particular, we'll call her Karen, had decided that I was on her blacklist. Karen hates doing work. She's like a kid playing Xbox. When their parents ask them for help with groceries, she'll moan and groan, and if she helps at all, it is with an angsty indignation. I needed a series of blood tubes drawn in clinic for a patient one morning, and guess what? Karen was the only nurse available. She was extremely put off by my asking her to help me out with this. She clearly did not want to leave her computer, which wasn't even open to anything work-related, but eventually she begrudgingly went and drew the tubes. She was also then unnecessarily profusely thanked by me just for doing her stupid job. I came back down later to get a prescription signed for another patient, and a different nurse asked me what I had done to upset Karen, because she had apparently been going off about me to anyone who would listen. I explained what happened, and the other nurse informed me that Karen was incredibly upset, and also felt my outfit, which was a white medical coat, a modest blouse, work pants, and high-heel boots, was apparently way too provocative. I thought to myself, what are you talking about? I just decided to let it go and try and avoid Karen as much as possible, but this did not work. I kept running into situations where the other nurses were busy seeing patients, patients, I was forced to walk back into the nurse's triage room, which is off limits to patients, and ask this Karen to draw 2 more of these blood kits in the next month. She was never happy to see me, and she was always wasting time on her work computer when I entered the room. Maybe 2 or 3 days after the last kit was drawn, my supervisor called me into her office to discuss my presentation. She very nicely, and with pity in her voice, told me that she had received a report about my dress habits in patient-facing spaces. She said she personally hadn't noticed anything, but was obligated to discuss this with me anyways. I assured her I had no idea what she was talking about. I thought about confronting this Karen, but decided not to because this lady was a loose cannon. After a brief reminder of the dress code, I figured at least it was over. Well, it was not over. 2 weeks later, a formal report was filed against me for my conduct in the clinic, and I had not even asked anyone to draw any kits in the interim. This went to the hospital and then my supervisor, who, even after reading the report, seemed totally clueless about what it could mean. I then explained what happened with this Karen, but then my supervisor told me that a second person had reported this as well, on the same day as who was obviously the Karen. This time though, it was a patient. The patient had reported that I was dressing improperly for a patient-facing environment, but I asserted that no, I didn't do that. But I was nonetheless put on probation, which meant that my supervisor, against her will, now had to come with me when I saw patients in clinic for the foreseeable future, and a nurse manager would have to accompany both of us when she was free, since I was dressing provocatively in patient-facing spaces, and that was her domain. But as you can likely guess from her browsing habits, this Karen was not the sort of person who needed more supervisors in her area. So this is when my malicious compliance came in. Fine, you want to punish me and force me to work in the eyesight of supervisors? Alright, let's get the supervisors down here as quickly as possible. My next in-clinic patient came in 2 days, and it was one of those visits that involved the protocol kits, which meant I was forced to ask one of the nurses to draw the patient's blood. I informed my supervisor and we set off down for clinic. The nurse manager was in that day, so she accompanied the 2 of us. We all went back to the triage room so that I could ask for help with the blood draws. Karen and one other nurse were there as well. What we saw upon entering was the other nurse entering vital signs for a patient straight into our health database, and the Karen was sitting at her desk with an online clothing retailer open in one monitor and Facebook open on the other. I asked for Karen's help drawing the kit, and she sighed heavily and spun around, just to see 2 higher-ups looking on with disdain at her work's computer. In embarrassment, she swiveled back and closed those 2 tabs, which revealed, and you can't make this stuff up, certain products that are kinda sketchy to be looking at work, if you know what I mean. And that had been open in another tab, about which this Karen had clearly forgotten about until now. I just smiled and handed her the bag like nothing happened. In the hall, my supervisor and the nurse manager were talking about Karen's display just now. Apparently, she had been previously warned about goofing off at work. The nurse manager told the supervisor that she was going to check all of Karen's work computer activity, which I actually didn't know any supervisor could readily access. What followed was so incredibly beautiful that I hope made the ending of this long post well worth waiting for. According to the nurse who had initially asked me what I had done to upset the Karen, her activity was completely searched. She was revealed to have spent hours upon hours every day browsing the web, shopping online, and using social media. Since she had been previously warned about this behavior, she was given a formal write-up. But this was just the beginning. The day after the 3 of us went down to the clinic, my supervisor called me into her office again. She told me that Karen had fabricated the patient complaint about me and posted it from her work computer. Now, how did they learn about this, you might be asking? Well, it's because she saved a draft of the message that reported me to the hospital, and she had accessed the patient complaint page the same day. My supervisor sincerely apologized for the hassle and told me I was no longer on probation. As for this entitled Karen, apparently fearing the worst, she put in her 2 weeks notice in the same day after getting wind that she was in some far more serious trouble. For reasons I will never understand as long as I live, the hospital chose to let her quit after 2 weeks instead of firing her on the spot. Maybe they knew what a nightmare she was and were comfortable letting her quit on her own accord. It's not as though she was due to glean any glowing references from this experience anyways. Maybe they just wanted some extra work. I mean, our clinic was very short-staffed for nurses at the time anyways. In any case, they chose not to fire her and let her quit on her own time. On the Karen's last day, I ventured down to the triage room to retrieve some outside records from their printer. When I entered, the Karen was a alone and browsing Glassdoor. I unbuttoned my whole white coat and told her loud, "Hey, good luck with your next job. I hope the next employees you deal with are less provocative." She slowly spun around with a scowl on her face, and then I walked out, and I never saw that entitled Karen ever again. Honestly, I can't stand coworkers like that. Not only do they not want to work there, but they're also miserable, and it seems like they have a vendetta against you, and they want you to be miserable as well. Like, that seriously is so unfair. The original poster didn't do anything wrong. If anything, they just wanted to do their job and get it done. And unfortunately, that involved other people doing their job as well. Like, this Karen nurse has no business being in the medical field. They don't care about people in the slightest. They don't care about anyone, in fact. They would rather spend all day on social media or shopping online or looking up sketchy things instead of doing their job and saving lives. Like, seriously, if you hate your job that much, it might be time for some kind of career change. And how crazy is that she made up a false claim from a patient just to get this person in trouble, all because she asked them to draw some blood? Like, seriously, was it worth your job? Was it worth trying to ruin someone else's career just so you could try and get some petty revenge? I'm really with the original poster here. That entitled Karen should have been straight up fired instead of waiting 2 weeks. I mean, I totally get that you guys are short-staffed, but let's be honest, she wasn't doing anything to assist that hospital in the slightest. So good for the original poster for getting some well-deserved revenge. This entitled Karen absolutely had it coming, and it's really nice to finally see justice get served. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. Today, I messed up by getting stuck on my roof like a complete idiot, forcing me to call the police to try and help me out, which resulted in my embarrassment getting even higher than before. Here's what happened. Okay, so this actually happened yesterday, but I've only just mentally recovered enough to speak about it. So it was a sunny day, and in my flat, the only place the sun really hits is the window facing onto the roof and the streets below. I decided, obviously, to sit on my windowsill with the window wide open and get some sunbathing in. I don't spend that long on the windowsill because I get hungry, and I eventually decide to go back in, swinging my legs round back into the living room. Somehow, I managed to knock my phone off the edge with my hand, and it goes flying further onto the roof. My flat is on the top floor, and the roof slants for a bit, and then it's just kind of flat, so it's not the most dangerous roof out there. Obviously, I'm not just gonna leave my phone out there, cause what if it rains? Like, I need my phone. Anyways, I go and get it by scooting over to it really slowly, so I don't trip and fall off the edge. I'm being so safe about it, surely nothing can go wrong, right? Well, as I get out from under the window, which opens upwards, I must have knocked it, making it fly shut. Not fully, but it closes the latch, which you need to push up just to open. My jaw has never dropped so fast in my life, because of course this happens to me. Of course this happens when all my flatmates are out of town. I panic a little bit, but I'm thinking to myself, I just need to push up the latch from below, it'll be fine. I find some kind of metal bar further on the roof, because this building is falling apart. I mean, it's seconds away from just straight up disintegrating. I managed to slip my hand through the tiny gap in the side, and I try with all my strength to push the latch up. When I tell you I sat there for like 20 minutes trying to push this latch up, I'm not joking. My hand and arm is all scratched up because of it. Well, I get nowhere with that metal bar, so I decide to call my friend, who has a lot more common sense than I do. They tell me to call 911, so I do exactly that. I'm already embarrassed because I've been stuck on this roof for long enough already, and now I have to tell the authorities how I managed to get stuck on the roof like an idiot. They come 5 minutes later, sirens and all, and they call me again. I scoot closer to the edge and I wave down to them, and while on the phone, I tell them I can just chuck my keys down to them so that we don't have to shut down the entire road just to get me down. But nope, that's not gonna happen. They put up the safety tape, and they start to maneuver the cherry picker just to try and come and get me. I'm actually considering just jumping off at this point. I'm so embarrassed. Not only have I done the dumbest thing imaginable and locked myself on the roof, now literally everyone in the entire city has come by to see what is happening. Like, there's a crowd waiting outside the tape just to see what happened. I eventually get on the cherry picker and I get down, which is actually quite cool that I got to be on one, even though this was all incredibly humiliating. After I got down, I was so set to run back into my flat and just never leave it again. But of course, the police have to ask me if I'm having a mental health crisis, so I have to tell them, no, I'm just a complete idiot. And they probably agree with me, honestly. I mean, I wouldn't blame them either. Anyways, I obviously told everyone in my life about this, because now that I think about it, it is kind of hilarious. I don't think my parents are very proud of me anymore, but I mean, whatever. They raised me like this, so this is kind of their fault. That is honestly hilarious. Here you are just trying to get your stupid phone, and then suddenly there's an entire crowd watching your stupid self get off the roof. I mean, that honestly really sucks. I know I would be embarrassed in that situation, so I really do have sympathy for the original poster. And I also think it's really dumb how the police didn't just go into your house and open the window. Like, they very easily could have done that. You gave them permission, and you were willing to throw down your keys so they could do that. That really seems like the most obvious thing to do in this kind of situation. So next time you decide to go out on your windowsill, make sure there's something there to stop the window from closing. Because while this really was an embarrassing moment in your life, let's pray that this doesn't happen again by accident. An entitled Karen freaks out at the store I'm working at, all because she doesn't get the discount that she demands. And I'm honestly so sick of people like this, and I seriously hope I never deal with her ever again. Here's what happened. I work at a popular dollar store chain in a small town in Texas. We have an old computer system that occasionally needs to be reset due to its glitching. Before the events of this story, we had a problem with some coupons that wouldn't ring up properly, which caused a small bit of a line to pile up at my register, which was the only open register at the time. Most of the customers were super understanding and kind. They usually are, but this one particular person wasn't the most friendly. That's okay. I can deal with grumpy or impatient. I'm almost always in a good mood, and I'm happy to help out. It may sound surprising, but I really love my job and my customers. This lady, we'll call her the Karen of the story, sets down 5 of those candy packages with the 5 pieces of on-brand chocolate inside a rectangular cardboard strip on the counter. We had a sale for $5 for candy of that same brand. This is where things immediately got rocky. I began scanning, and as I was telling the last customer to have a nice day, she cuts me off. Yeah, okay, I need you to total those and see the price for the 5 for $5 to see if you will actually apply this coupon. Okay, let's get started then, I guess. So I smile and I say, of course, we can absolutely check that for you. I total the candies up and the discount doesn't apply. I say to her, I'm sorry ma'am, it doesn't apply. This Karen gets huffy, rolls her eyes and says, yeah, y'all did this the last time, you're shorting me my discount. I check the packages to see if they apply to the discount, and immediately I noticed they weren't made by the same brand or company. Karen, as I looked at the candies, loudly stated, they're Hershey-made chocolate, I already checked. Now, I didn't wish to argue with her, and I thought that maybe our system had made an error. I say to her, okay, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I'll go check with my associate to see if we can figure out what the issue is. The entitled Karen crosses her arms, says okay, and begins talking to the nice man behind her, who had a full cart waiting patiently while I walked behind a shelf to find my coworker. I heard this Karen loudly ranting to the man, this is why I don't come here. They are so slow and always on their phones. I didn't know what she meant. We tend to keep off our phones unless in the break room. I come back after telling my coworker, an absolute saint of a woman, that I need her assistance. All right, she's on her way. I smile to the man and the Karen and I say, we can go ahead and scan the rest of your items, ma'am, while we wait for her to come around. I begin to scan the items before I get one of the last bags of candy before the Karen says, don't scan that one. Caught off guard, I say to her, what do you mean? She said, don't scan that one. It's $1 difference, which is what you owe me for that candy. That way you won't be shorting me. I hesitate and I say to her, ma'am, I'm sorry, but I can't legally do that. She scoffs and I try to explain. We can scan all these items and at the end of it, when my coworker gets here, we can figure out if it's the system and see if we can fix the discount for you. She once again cuts me off. She says, okay, do whatever you need to do. I forced a smile and I finish the item. This is too much trouble, the Karen says to the nice man, who says something with humor to lighten the situation. The Karen speaks again. This is why I've stopped coming here. She is taking forever because she is back there playing on her phone. She was referring to my coworker, who had been on break inside of our break room eating and scrolling on her phone. I speak before I can think, and I say, well, she's actually on break. And to my surprise, this made the entitled Karen stop talking, with my coworker on the way to save the day, thank God. She put her key in the system and asked what the problem was. Before I could even begin to explain, the entitled Karen cut me off. This is 5 for $5, and it's not giving me my discount. Y'all owe me $1 discount. Okay, well, let's see what we can do. My coworker does some magic with the system and sets it right to get this lady her precious discount. Okay, there we go, I say to her to then total the items. Finally, the Karen says. She pays for her items, gives a half-hearted thank you, and then storms off out of the store. I say to her, you're welcome, and then immediately went to the next customer. Sorry for your wait, sir. He just chuckled and cracked a few jokes saying that it was okay, and relieved me of my stress. It turns out that the lady was wrong about the discount and I had been right to check the candy because it was not in fact applicable to this discount. We went to check back because it was strange even for the system to mess up like that. My coworker just added the discount to diffuse the situation from getting any worse than it already was. And honestly, I hope I never have to deal with that Karen ever again. That honestly leads me to believe that she did that on purpose. She used the classic tactic of overwhelming the person at the front desk just to try and get what they want. She was rude, she was hateful, she was demanding that you not check certain items, like she was clearly trying to hide something pretty obvious in front of everybody. And that's not fair for you in the slightest. Like, think about it, you're just trying to do your job. You don't want this hassle. You want to check her out and get her out the door and then stop thinking about her. But at least your associate had some kind of insight to just give her the discount and send her on her way. And hopefully for the sake of you and everybody else in that store, you never have to deal with her ever again. Am I the jerk for hiding food from my boyfriend after he eats all the good junk food all in one sitting right after I went shopping? Here's what happened. So my boyfriend and I have been together for years and we now live together. We don't have kids and we're very happy and we have good communication. There's just one issue that drives me nuts. We use a joint account to buy food for us, usually shopping together a few times a month, and then one of us picking up things here and there. I cook dinner almost every night, and we don't eat a ton of junk, but occasionally I'll buy things we both love for a weekend or just to indulge here and there. The issue is that I go to bed on the early side and he stays up late and goes full ham on any junk food we have around on any given night of the week. I'm talking an entire family-sized bag of chips and the entire container of queso. It'll all be gone in one sitting that I was saving for Friday night margaritas. I went to make us root beer floats with a quart of ice cream and 2 liters of soda, and they were gone from shopping 2 days prior. He doesn't ever replace things. He just gives me a sheepish smile when I ask where the rest of something is, knowing that he ate it all. So last night after cleaning up the kitchen from dinner, I put all the candy and chips and anything shelf stable in a different place where he wouldn't find them. He went ballistic after I went to bed that all the good food was gone, even though I had just cooked a nice dinner. I told him, well, welcome to my world, as this is constantly happening. When I go to have anything that's been purchased, he said I was treating him like a child, and I said he was acting like one. I don't care that he indulges, but to literally finish off every bit of something that's been bought for both of us to enjoy is honestly getting really old. It's not a weight thing or a money thing. I just want him to leave maybe one portion for me, or maybe we can enjoy something together. So until he can show me some kind of willpower, I told him I won't be keeping any junk food around for him to gorge himself on unless it's something that he's purchased on his own account. Part of me thinks that this is funny, which is why I might be kind of a jerk, but I think he needs to figure out how to share, as well as needing to figure out how to not consume the entire lot in one sitting, or figure out how to buy his own treats. So am I the jerk for hiding food from my boyfriend? No, I don't think you're the jerk in this situation. He is literally eating all the food in one sitting. Like, you bought this so both of you can enjoy it, but he's going literally out of his way to eat everything all at once. Like, seriously, this guy needs to find some limits. So if hiding it kind of wakes him up to the way he's been acting, then I seriously don't see that as a big deal, because the way he's acting is incredibly selfish, and he needs to learn to share, otherwise the food is always just gonna stay hidden. My entitled manager demands to search my bag, claiming that one of their employees is a thief and is actively stealing merchandise from their store. But I wasn't about to take this sitting down, so I decided to get some revenge, and in retaliation, I put some incredibly sketchy and scandalous things in my bag that she would be forced to handle and search through, with the sole intention of punishing her for ever thinking it would be a good idea to search my bag. And I've never felt better about getting back at my boss in my life. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I work 3 jobs. The hours and the days vary, but my full-time job is an office space in a very fancy modern office with a great company. They have some great perks on site as well. They've got a full gym, lockers and showers, a full cafeteria, etc. My second job is close to a full-time job, depending on other employees' availability, as there is no set schedule and it can be very chaotic and not well run. It's a boutique and it's just a bus ride from my office, and it's all in a very busy downtown city by the ocean. The thing is, it's a tourist boutique. It's all city branded trinkets, shirts, postcards, and gifts. There's really not much any locals would want unless you're buying it for out-of-town family. To round things out, my third job is a fast food place. I'm often between these 2 jobs and I don't have time to run home. I carry a gym bag with me with my tiny purse as well as my wallet wallet inside, along with clean business professional clothes, gym clothes, and work uniforms to change in and out of, as well as extra underwear, as it is summer and it's extremely hot, and our buses don't usually ever have AC, so if there's time, I'll shower at the office, so I bring travel-size shower items as well. I also carry along a book for the bus rides, as I don't have a car of my own, as well as lunch, snacks, and a hairbrush. Now, apparently, the boutique has experienced a lot of loss, something we had previously brought up being an issue, because our boss, the owner, will have big tables and buckets of items outside by the sides of the door where we can't monitor them, especially if we're inside with the customers. People definitely take advantage, and we've seen a lot of people grab things and then just take off. And these aren't cheaper items in the store either. We've lost an entire display of mid-price sunglasses, handful of bikini separates, and at one point the entire table was emptied in a snatch and run with 5 younger people. But with all of this, he actually thinks it's us stealing things. His wife runs the store and she's always in. She said we have a new mandatory bag check, and every employee in the store is a woman who usually carries a purse or a bag. It's not just a quick look through the bag either. She wants to remove the items and feel around the sides of the bag and make sure we aren't taking any trinkets and items. I'll be honest, I haven't seen anybody on staff ever steal anything, and there's 4 of us in total, and I don't even think it's because they're all stand-up employees. I think it's because they don't care to own any of the cheap, tacky tourist items. Because my bag is bigger, it's been kind of a nightmare for me. She wants me to take every individual item out of my bag and show that there's nothing wrapped up inside of it, lay it out across the table by the register. The first day of this, I was late to work because she wouldn't start checking my bag until I clocked out, and then she took her time with a customer, causing me to be almost half an hour late to my other job. I consider that I could just continue getting lockers at my office, but they are day use only, so depending on my schedule, I'd have to make a separate trip to get back to the office before the building closed just to remove my items, and it wouldn't be feasible with my other jobs. I'm honestly pretty sure the staff who cleans the lockers at the end of the day probably wouldn't mind and would work something out for me, but I don't feel like I need to go out of my way to keep a steady rotation on a locker. If my boutique manager wants to make things awkward and difficult for me, then I'm gonna turn it around and do it right back at her. Now, she is a very tightly wound conservative lady, so I added a few extra items to my gym bag. Now, I don't get my period, but I did throw in some female hygiene products just to try and make her squirm, because period talk makes her absolutely faint. I also included some new reading material as well, some old sketchy magazines from the 70s that are definitely not something you want to bring to work. I keep it at the house for aesthetic purposes, and to be honest, I just like them. I also swapped in some of my most scandalous and functionally impossible underwear, but also one of my granniest of panties. I also, for no reason at all, included some contraceptives, some furry handcuffs, and I picked up a pamphlet at a nearby community center for their group therapy for bereavement. And let me tell you, it went off perfectly at the end of my shift. There were customers in the store, and she made me go through my bag item by item, opening them up and holding it up so she can check to make sure there was nothing hidden. I carefully fanned out my old magazine to show there was nothing between the pages. I pulled out each set of underwear like a creepy fashion show, holding them up to the light so she can see directly through the lace. Every item we pulled out of the gym bag made her more and more flush. She was so uncomfortable she could barely perform the check. She nearly had a panic attack when I pulled out a little sandwich baggie with female hygiene products in it. I even pulled out the pamphlet and set it aside slowly, with the intent to seem affected by it. And when I did that, she looked at me puzzled and kind of confused. She asked me what this is about, and I said to her solemnly, "Oh, I haven't lost anybody, but it's a great place to meet new people." And I pulled the contraceptives out right after saying that. My second bag check was definitely faster than the first, and I was finished and out the door in time to catch my bus and arrive to work earlier than I ever expected. Speed running the bag check wasn't my initial plan, but it was definitely an unconsidered plus to the situation. Now, I honestly don't mind doing a bag check if they really feel like it's so necessary, but the invasiveness of making every employee pull out everything inside their bags on a table where every customer in the store has a plain view of everything they have is honestly a little much, and purposefully making it take so much time that it's interfering with my other jobs as well as my personal life is just really crossing a line. But now I'm kind of excited to see what other items I can include in my gym bag just to keep this lady on her toes. I don't want it to be too obvious, but just enough to make her consider that a lady's bag is usually private, and upending that for all customers to see might not be great for business. Wow, that's an awful policy to throw on your workers, and it also shows that they blatantly just don't trust you. They assume that, wow, they have to be the ones stealing, and not the people literally out front taking the merchandise that these stupid owners are leaving out without even thinking about it. I personally side completely with the original poster. This is a huge invasion of privacy, and there's legitimately no good reason to act like this. Like, if they really wanted to investigate why they're losing so much merchandise, they should maybe start by setting up cameras outside, and then they might capture some of the people that are stealing from their store. And it makes sense. Like, who in their right mind would steal this stupid tourist stuff? It's stuff like postcards and trinkets and shirts. I know if I worked there, the last thing I would want to do is try and take any items from that store. And also, why are they searching their bags off the clock? Like, isn't that really counterintuitive? Like, if you're gonna waste my time and spend, what, 30 minutes searching my bag, you better believe I want to be on the clock so I get paid. And the original poster has 2 other jobs. Like, are these owners really that inconsiderate? So personally, good for you for saying, you know what, if you want to search my bag, I'm gonna make you pay for it. Putting stuff in your bag that would intentionally mess with this lady is really funny to me. And based on the way she treats her employees, it honestly really sounds like she had it coming. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. An entitled Karen has a meltdown over ice cream in her shopping cart, claiming that she never bought it despite the fact that it was bagged up and ready to go. And I've never been more amazed by someone else's entitlement in my life. Here's what happened. So I overheard a Karen while I was in a self-checkout. She was already at the register, and the only register open was next to her. I had to park my cart further away than I wanted to because she had at least 6 kids under 10 years old, all of them swarming the area. One of the stupid kids was standing still, completely in the way of where my cart should have gone. And that one child seemed to be the only child that realized how crazy things were getting and was embarrassed and mentally shutting down. I also understand the woman was overwhelmed, which probably caused her to melt down. I'm not sure if they were all her kids or not, but she was already screaming and cursing at them as they were running away from the self-checkout area and running by the employee-manned registers. Now, I was just minding my own business. I was completely ignoring it. As long as they didn't mess with me, it was fine. I scanned a box and it came up as an unknown item. 2 employees started to head my way, and I thought possibly one was training the other one, which would explain 2 of them coming over. What I didn't know is that the Karen had also called them over as well. She wanted them to take ice cream off of her receipt, saying that she didn't have any ice cream. The employee then pointed at her grocery bag and said, "Isn't that the ice cream?" And you can clearly see it through the bag. This Karen goes off on him. "How dare you look through my bags? That's invading my privacy. Take that stupid ice cream off right now. I am not paying for that. What's your name? Tell me right now." And right after the employee gives them their name, she says to this guy that she's going to call corporate on him. The guy that helped me already fixed the scanning issue, but he was still standing there confused. I think he was trying to figure out if he should jump in or if he should just stay quiet. Maybe he was preparing for a fight, I don't know. The employee was trying to explain, but there was more screaming and cussing. Then the Karen was out of there pretty quickly, so I'm not sure entirely what happened, but I have 3 options in mind. First of all, there's a chance she already paid before wanting the ice cream taken off, or they took the ice cream off, took the loss, and then she paid. Or the very distinct third option that she took off without paying. I was still standing for another few minutes as I scanned the rest of my items and paid for my stuff. The employees started to gather to see if the employee that was yelled at was doing okay. One employee showed up and said they saw it on the cameras and rushed over thinking that there was about to be a fight. They comforted them by saying that if the Karen does call back, they have their back. I also heard one of them say that the Karen was already an issue before she got to the checkout. As I was leaving, this entitled Karen was stuck in the entryway as her kids were trying to fish quarters out of the sticker machines. I had a ton of trouble navigating around them as she was in the doorway screaming at them to move. The last thing I heard was this entitled Karen screaming. She said to these kids, "That's it. I am not taking you to the stupid amusement park." And I honestly just feel bad for the workers if they ever have to deal with this Karen ever again. Wow, that lady was being really obnoxious. There's 2 possibilities that came to mind for me. She either really was trying to steal that ice cream, or one of the kids put that in the cart without her knowing. Like, for me, it's one or the other. She's either trying to pull a fast one or one of those kids is doing the exact same thing to her. And hopefully it's just the kids being stupid, because I can't imagine having to deal with someone like that who is seriously so out of touch that they freak out over the smallest of things. Like, does she not realize she's in public right now? Like, people can see you acting insane. It doesn't help that you have no control over any of your kids, but you're also causing this massive scene. Like, seriously, she needs to get a grip and calm down. So next time, she should probably be way more mindful of what she puts in her cart, because chances are this will probably happen again. I'm convinced that my boyfriend resents me now that I'm earning more money than him as a doctor, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So I met my boyfriend, who is a school teacher, about 6 years ago, and this is when I was still a med student. He helped me during the difficult years of my residency, and we had what I thought was a solid relationship. We have similar interests in movies, music, board games. We had some arguments, but they were always resolved through talking. We also always have fun together. Now that I finally finished residency and landed a solid job with good pay, we even started looking for a place to move together. The thing is, now that I finally feel like we can truly start to enjoy things, all with having a more financially stable situation and with me having more free time, he seems to really resent me, and I don't understand that. It started innocent enough, with him making slight remarks about me now being a fancy doctor, and this is all when I bought some new, better quality and professional clothing. But now the remarks never seem to stop. We went to a holiday together, and I booked a better hotel room than we usually get, and this was all because I can afford one like that now, and I was very excited about it. He told me I was showing off my new doctor money. I paid for his entrance ticket to a concert to a band we both liked, and he told me he would prefer if we went to a local bar. I then paid for dinner at a restaurant that we always talked about trying in the future, and he just complains about the size of the portions. Yesterday, I gave him a new shirt, and he told me, "Oh, of course, now I have to dress better just to be with you." I told him that phrase hurt me, and he told me he was just joking, to which I said that jokes were supposed to be funny and not hurtful, and he then accused me of being too sensitive. I left shortly afterwards because he refused to talk more about it. I simply do not understand this man. I pay these things for him because I wanted to enjoy them with him, and since I can't afford them and he can't, it seemed obvious that I would just pay his part. Gift giving is one of my love languages, especially if this gift is an experience we can have together. When we started our relationship, it was clear that I would earn more than him someday. I mean, I am training to be a doctor after all, and with him being a school teacher, he is going to have a profoundly unfair low salary. He even talked about being a stay-at-home dad at one point. I am profoundly confused by his current behavior. It seems clear that he resents me and refuses to talk about it. At the same time, we've been together for 6 years. I love him dearly, and I'm hoping that it's just a phase. What should I do? First things first, I really cannot stand when people make jabs at you and then try and lie and be like, "Oh, I was just joking." No, you were not just joking. You really did mean that. You just want to say that you're joking so you can get away with saying toxic stuff. And this guy fits that stereotype completely. He is straight up jealous and resentful of the money that you make. He's mad because you're a doctor and he's just a school teacher, and his salary is absolute garbage. I mean, it's no secret, especially in the United States, that teachers do not make a lot of money, especially in public school. Like, some of these teachers barely make a living, and on top of that, they've got to deal with kids all day that are just awful most times. But regardless, if he really wanted to be a partner with you, he would and should be more grateful and excited for your new career. Like, how can this guy not see the silver lining here? Like, sure, he doesn't make very good money, but his girlfriend does. His literal future wife is a doctor. How could he not be excited about that future with his future wife? If I was in his shoes, I'd be super excited about that. This isn't a contest of who can make more money, because this guy's gonna lose every single time. Like, the original poster is gonna be making 6 figures probably for the rest of their life, but that is literally okay because you're supposed to be a partnership, and his jealousy and resentment is completely uncalled for, and in my opinion, it is not normal. So I really think, in my opinion, especially if I was in the original poster's shoes, there absolutely has to be a conversation about this, because his behavior and comments are incredibly hurtful, and there's no reason for you to be on the receiving end of his jealousy. My boss demands that I take my students on a bathroom break every 20 minutes, so I decide to maliciously comply, forcing my boss to realize how stupid of a rule that truly is. Here's what happened. So several years ago, I worked for the worst boss ever. I was working as a teacher at a preschool. I had 28 students students in my class from the ages of 4 all the way to 5. I had no assistants at any time of the day, so this meant I had to do a lot of things all by myself. And this is stuff that I had to do all at once as well. And one of those things was bathroom breaks. The bathroom had a half wall, boys on one side and girls on the other. This way the teacher can supervise all learners at once. I had a very well-oiled routine with my class at bathroom breaks. Here's how it worked. I had 2 lines, one for the boys and one for the girls. They lined up at opposite sides so that you could not see into each other's toilet. Kids would go in 4 at a time. Once you're done, you sit on the floor in the doorway until everybody else is done. This way, I could keep my eyes on almost every child at all times. The doors were also always open, so I could run out if needed. I could also jump over the half wall if I needed to. And basically, I had everyone within a few meters of myself. This entire routine took about 10 minutes. I did my routine once every hour. Kids could go to the bathroom by themselves in between bathroom breaks. There was no real issues. That is until my boss comes shouting into my class one day, stating that a girl in my class has had an accident. She wet herself on the way to the bathroom. My boss shouted about this girl wetting her pants in front of all of my students. And this is right when we were in the middle of having free play. The kids were all silent. She screamed at me, and I just tried to explain that she was on her way, and she just didn't make it in time, and that our next bathroom break was in 10 minutes. But she continued shouting at me. I waited for her to finish screaming at me, and then I asked her if the child who wet herself had been helped out and changed into new clothes. She says to me no, and that I have to go do it. Now, I can't leave my learners unsupervised, so I ask if she could keep an eye on my class while I change the student into dry clothes. She looks me in the eyes and says, "No, your entire class is having a bathroom break now, and from now on, you go every 20 minutes. Bathroom break, the whole class every 20 minutes." So I just nodded my head and told my learners it was pack-up time. She said to leave the class as is and go to the bathroom. The kids line up at the class door, and then we walk outside a few meters to the lockers. We line up again while I collect new clothing. Then we walk to the bathroom and do the routine as above. And on top of this, I need to change the student into dry clothing. And let me tell you, this was an absolute nightmare. I checked the clock when we left and made a mental note to come back in 20 minutes. And I did exactly that, every 20 minutes. But the problem is that the bathrooms get cleaned every 30 minutes. So oftentimes we would have to wait outside because the bathroom was still wet. Now, other classes needed to use the toilet, but we were constantly in there. We walked to the toilet and just walked back if no one said they needed the bathroom. By the end of the day, they were so sick of going to the toilet. The next morning, we continued the routine. That meant that sometimes parents came to drop off and there was no one to welcome them or watch their child, or that parents were still trying to do a handover, and then it's been 20 minutes, so it's time for another bathroom break. This was getting super obnoxious. We started our morning circle ring, and then we went to the bathroom. We read a story, and then we went to the bathroom. We had free play and then the bathroom. Every 20 minutes. Everyone in that school was so annoyed with me. Everyone knew it was ridiculous, but I told them that's what the boss lady told me to do, so that's what we're gonna do. That afternoon, a schedule was sent out as to when every class may use the bathroom, scheduling the bathroom breaks and cleaning breaks for all the classes. And wouldn't you know it, my class was scheduled for once every 60 minutes. So at least that's something to look forward to for my kids. That boss was incredibly inappropriate. I'm assuming that was probably like the principal or something like that, but that boss was completely out of line. Not only did she completely embarrass that kid who wet herself, but she also set a horrible example for those kids. Like, think about it for a second. This boss just screamed at their employee in front of all these kids. These kids look up to this teacher. This teacher is seen as a friendly adult figure in their life. And here this principal comes in and just starts screaming at them. And this is all over something that she had no control over. Like, she's not the reason why this kid wet their pants. It's not like she doesn't have a solid routine. I mean, we all heard exactly what she does every day just to make sure her kids are being taken care of. So that in and of itself was honestly ridiculous. But I really do love this teacher's response. She didn't get angry or lash out in any kind of way, but instead she maliciously complied, and she showed this principal exactly why she was being so dumb. So good for the original poster for putting this principal in their place, because their actions were completely uncalled for, and they had no right to talk to this teacher or to embarrass that student in the way that they did.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Everything will be linked down below in the description.